Valhalla is one of the best institutions for hunters, with countless people trying to join every year. However, not many people manage to enroll, and less than 150 people even graduate. The selection round takes the form of a battle between candidates for admission. All of this is closely observed by the highest-ranking combat instructor, Adam. Suddenly, Kevin approaches him. He is the heir to the important Yoshin family. Adam immediately asks if Kevin came here just to see his niece. The man answers yes because in their family everyone expects great success from Olivia. Olivia is a child genius born into one of the top 5 families in Korea, and by the age of 10, she already had the mana capacity of a high school student. At 13, she was able to transfer mana into her sword, and at 16, she competed with her family members and won. Adam asked Kevin if there was anything he didn't already know about his niece, and the man replied that they said she could communicate with her family's guardian constellation. The instructor was shocked by what the man answered him. He asks if Kevin really believes this. The man says yes with complete confidence because that is why he expects a lot from her. The 5 main families were given their status in Korea because guardian constellations are associated with each of them. Ordinary hunters receive blessings or make a contract with a constellation, but the guardian constellations of the 5 families are different from others. Yoshin family is the god of the sword, and everyone in their family is an excellent swordsman. The Jones family, the Holy Spear, with the help of mana, can create a spear from any stick that is in no way inferior to a stone one. Chojan family, King of Dao, despite the shape of their Dao blades, they are amazing at fighting with them, which is beyond the capabilities of other people. Davis family is the king of the fist, and they have no equal in physical strength. Dojin family is the god of the bow and can hit any moving object, even the smallest one, with an arrow from any distance. Adam says that if Olivia can really communicate with her guardian constellation, then she is definitely a genius. Before Olivia's fight even begins, Kevin asks the instructor to also watch his niece. Adam says that in that case, he will have to go down and go through the whole crowd of spectators and reporters. Kevin objects and tells Adam to simply display what's happening on the screen. The man complied with the request because he himself became interested in seeing it. Yoshin family's eldest daughter, 17-year-old Olivia, appears on the screen. Her opponent turned out to be a guy named Adrian. He is not a member of any of the 5 main families and almost nothing is known about him. Adam, seeing the guy, says that he is quite calm, to which Kevin suggests that he has probably already given up, since he knows who Olivia is. Meanwhile, Olivia was already eagerly awaiting the start of the fight. Adrian, on the contrary, became bored, which is why he even began to yawn. Continuing to assess Olivia's opponent, the instructor said that the guy seemed to have no fighting spirit at all, and Kevin was completely confident that the fight would end quickly in his niece's favor. So, with 3 seconds left before the start, Olivia readied her sword. 2 seconds before the start, all Adrian did was start to stretch his shoulder, while remaining completely calm. When there was 1 second left, the girl's eyes were already full of determination. As soon as the test began, she immediately ran towards the enemy. Olivia, holding the sword with both hands, swung it hard. With a light movement, she cut through the air in front of her, creating a blade of mana. The blade rushed straight towards Adrian. At the last moment, when the blade was about to touch him, he managed to dodge, keeping a mocking smile on his face. Everyone around was taken aback, as absolutely no one expected such an outcome of events. Adrian had won, and from his expression it was clear that he had expected nothing less. He wondered why everyone around him was so weak, and if it was true that this was the future 300 years from now. Let's go back 300 years to the Tower of Destruction. A wounded Barie, the Tower of Destruction boss and God of Destruction, tells Adrian that their battle was excellent. Adrian, who was also the god of martial arts, was also seriously injured, just like Barie. But the guy was able to find the strength in himself and delivered the final blow to the god of destruction with a kick right in the head. Adrian wins, and at that moment a system message appears in front of him, which says that he defeated the boss of the Tower of Destruction and the destruction of the world was stopped. At that moment, the tower began to collapse rapidly. Adrian thought that this was the end, since due to the wound he could not leave the tower, and after this mission he was finally going to rest. He had already begun to regret that he had gone to the tower alone, forbidding his students to go with him, but he quickly realized that if they had been with him, they would all have died in agony. Adrian had already accepted his imminent death and realized that he could not change anything. But suddenly he wakes up in the body of a 17-year-old boy, 300 years after the victory over the Tower of Destruction. He was pleased with his reincarnation. Although his body was not as strong as before, all his past knowledge still remained within him. One day, the system message appeared in front of him again, But this time it said that in 5 years the Tower of Destruction would appear again, and he needed to get ready. He began to think that he should have destroyed the enemy completely then, but he decided that this would not help now, and next time, he would destroy the tower forever. The guy decided that after fulfilling his duty, he would live a life of prosperity. Immediately after that message, another one followed, which told him to return his weapons and memories to Valhalla School on the 3rd floor in the 5th room on the right. Adrian was sure that he understood what kind of weapon they were talking about, but he did not understand what kind of memories they were talking about. He decided to look for Valhalla. And now, the 4th day of the top 10 competition is already beginning, and the guy hears that those who want to take part should go up to the competition floor. As soon as everyone had entered the testing area, an announcement was made for everyone to take their positions. Instructor Adam is watching the proceedings again, and he notices that there are more people today than ever before, probably because all 5 main families are gathered here. Adrian's opponent this time was a guy named John. John is a muscular 17-year-old boy and the eldest son of the Davis family. John immediately recognized his opponent today, Adrian. He thought that if he could defeat his opponent, his image would improve. The King of the Fist told his opponent that he would quickly destroy him and that he didn't even have to try. At this, Adrian told John to go to hell and showed the middle finger, at which point the fight began. After what Adrian said, John became furious. He was never distinguished by his intellectual abilities or success in creativity. His talent lay in his physical strength. He was born with superior physical abilities, and even the slightest training made him stronger. He could do what others could only do with mana. Meanwhile, Adrian continued to show his middle finger and mock John. Then John concentrated all his mana into his fist and rushed at the enemy. Adrian understood that he would not be able to win physically, and decided that he would win with the help of agility and cunning. John's fist was rapidly approaching his opponent's face, but Adrian, with one deft tilt of his head, quickly dodged the blow. He then took advantage of the fact that his opponent was pushing gravity forward and hit him in the legs, causing John to fall. The guy didn't expect this. He was confident of his victory before it happened. Without wasting a second, Adrian delivered a decisive blow to John's stomach, causing his opponent to fall and lose consciousness. Adrian won again, and once again realized that although his body was weaker than before, it did not create much of a hindrance. The whole incident was observed by John's father, the head of the Davis family, who immediately realized that Adrian had won through his own cunning. He understood and comprehended the boy's entire fighting tactics. He understood that his son could dodge any attack, but not this one, because in this case, all of Adrian's movements were precisely planned. The man concluded that he was moving even faster than his son's top speed. He figured out the guy's brilliant plan and realized all its genius. He was delighted and horrified at the same time. Davis family decided that he would bring Adrian into his family no matter what the cost. As he went out to fight his next opponent, the boy couldn't understand why grown men were shouting words from the spectator seats, calling a 17-year-old girl a big sister. Adrian's rival was a 17-year-old girl named Roxy, the second daughter of the Chojan family. The match began, but neither opponent was in a hurry to attack first. Adrian was surprised that the girl waited and prepared because all his opponents before this had attacked rather thoughtlessly. He concluded that she was better than the others because she could understand the situation. Then the guy became interested and decided to start moving towards the girl. Roxy immediately began to take out the blade, fill it with mana, and change the element, producing lightning. All the spectators were taken aback by what they saw, because she is only 17 years old, and she already possesses such serious skills. The opponents approached each other. The girl continued to quickly draw her sword, and the guy simply grinned. The girl's eyes were full of determination and confidence. She made a sharp movement of her hand and struck towards Adrian, and it was bound to hit. But somehow he managed to dodge. The girl was perplexed. The guy said she had a chance if she hadn't shown with her eyes where she would hit. Roxy was taken aback, and Adrian was already standing next to her, ready to take the next step towards victory. He delivered a blow with mana straight into the girl's chest, thinking that this blow would be decisive. But Roxy was only thrown back by the shockwave. She remained on her feet and did not lose her balance. Adrian realized that he didn't feel the blow hitting his body, and the girl was able to block the blow with her sword. Goosebumps ran through the girl's body from how strong the blow was. While Roxy was shocked, Adrian wasted no time in striking again. He struck straight at the girl's sword with incredible force. She had not yet had time to recover from the previous blow. When the sword, which was aimed with its blade right at the girl's ribs, struck her, Roxy was unable to react and defend herself, causing her to fall. Adrian noticed that something was wrong with his blow, but he didn't focus on it, since the girl was defeated anyway. The guy once again defeated a representative of one of the main families. Adrian was #1 on the Valhalla qualifying list, entering Valhalla. After the competition, the winner was surrounded by reporters. Each of them urged the boy to join their guild, shouting out certain benefits. Adrian was very angry about this. It was clear from his face that he was furious, and he sent everyone to hell, showing the middle finger. News about this ignoramus quickly spread across the internet. All the comments were filled with people's indignation. Everyone was talking about his bad manners, but the guy didn't care about it. And so the first day of his training in Valhalla arrived. The boy was not at all interested in hearing about the school's 100-year history, and he became immersed in his thoughts. He noticed that the other students recognized him and showed attention to his person. Adrian had already begun to wonder if he had gone too far yesterday, but he quickly realized that he didn't care what others thought. The guy suddenly remembered the recent system message that had appeared in front of him recently. He remembered that he was only here to get his weapons and memories back. Immediately after the introductory lecture, he quickly left the school with the thought of how to quickly get to the 5th room on the right on the 3rd floor of the school. He headed to his next lesson, which was to take place in the virtual combat simulation room. A young 24-year-old teacher named Chris was already waiting for the group in the office. The teacher was perplexed by the fact that 3 representatives of the main families were placed in the same class at once. Yes, Roxy, John, and Olivia will be in the same class. But when the teacher noticed another guy in the group, he was shocked. Adrian was also assigned to his class. The teacher immediately realized that the year would be very difficult. But he could not remain in thought for long. He calmed down and began his lecture. Chris greeted the students and announced that he was their class teacher. Without waiting long, he decided to start the lesson right away, sharply pressing some button. The space around the students began to change rapidly, and all the students became very scared, as they did not understand what was happening. And so they found themselves somewhere in the forest among the trees. Even Adrian was taken aback by this. He immediately began to look around, studying the area. Suddenly, the students began to be surrounded by angry monsters. The students were even more scared, as no one expected this to happen in their first lesson. John immediately assessed the situation, realizing that these monsters were orcs and goblins, and that their numbers were quite large. Looking back, the guy returned his head to its previous position and was immediately taken aback by the fact that right in front of his face was already the hand of one of the monsters. The goblin tried to attack John, but he was unable to do so because the students were protected by the dome shield. This durable creation was the work of teacher Chris, who at that time watched the proceedings with a grin. The monsters continued to try to attack the students, but the barrier did its job. While all the students were distracted by what was happening, Adrian heard the teacher calling him. He calmly approached Chris, unaware of what he was about to offer him. The teacher mockingly asked if the boy would be able to cope with all the monsters on his own. Chris was sure that the students had only seen monsters in books, and by making such an offer to Adrian, he thought that it would humble the boy's ego. But Adrian simply laughed at the teacher's question. Not expecting such a reaction, Chris was taken aback. He repeated the question again, hoping that the guy was just bluffing, but he replied that he could handle it without any problem. The teacher, still in shock, shouted at Adrian to try it since he was so brave. The student knew that such tasks were not usually given during the first lesson and demanded a reward if he managed to destroy all the monsters. The teacher did not expect such impudence but did not object and promised to fulfill any request within the limits of his authority. Adrian agreed to such a reward. Chris warned the student that although the monsters were just a system, they attacked like real ones, to which Adrian simply asked the teacher to give him his sword. The teacher, with disbelief but without objection, handed his weapon to the boy. Adrian was flattered by this. He took a good look at the blade and prepared for battle. And then the barrier in front of him disappeared and he headed towards the orcs. The students abruptly turned their attention from the monsters to the boy, who decided that he could win on his own. And then fury flashed in Adrian's eyes, and he struck the first blow, cutting down several monsters at once. With each blow, he destroyed more and more monsters. The orcs tried to attack Adrian from behind, but they were unsuccessful, dodged all the attacks each time and delivered his own blow. He thought that 300 years had passed since he last held a sword in his hands. At that time, the world could not function fully due to monsters, and improvised means were used as weapons. Lost in thought, he didn't notice how an enraged goblin was already trying to attack him from behind. But as usual, the guy dodged his attack. He had long ago realized that the monsters here moved according to a simple pattern. All these monsters are just well-made fakes. The teacher and his students watched closely as Adrian easily destroyed all the orcs and goblins. Chris was incredibly surprised by what was happening, as the sword he gave Adrian was completely ordinary. The way the guy cut through all the monsters was truly amazing. because there was not a drop of magic in the sword. Olivia watched everything with a very displeased face. To John, everything that was happening seemed completely crazy, and only Roxy looked at it with complete admiration. And so, Adrian defeated all the monsters. He immediately said that his desire was to go down to the room of the constellations. With a smirk on his face, he asked Chris if their agreement was still in force. The teacher clearly didn't expect the boy to ask for something like that. And now, the environment has changed again to the familiar office. Chris will announce the end of the lecture. All the students began to leave, and only Adrian could not get up from his place. He was very exhausted after the battle with the monsters. The boy didn't expect that lessons could last so long, since he had never studied at school. His only desire was to find what he needed and leave this place as quickly as possible. As he left the school building, he again became immersed in his thoughts. Even though today's lessons were rather boring for him, he still learned something new about constellations. Because in his past life there was no such thing as constellations at all. Constellations are those who have achieved greatness and become gods. Most of them are associated with hunters and give them special powers. And Valhalla is the third largest academy in the world, which contains many constellation relics. And so Adrian walked, thinking that he needed to quickly return to the dorm and start training martial arts, since his body was too weak. He was distracted from his thoughts by a female voice calling out to him from somewhere behind him. Turning around, he saw Roxy behind him. At this time, an important conversation was taking place in the teacher's room between teacher Chris and instructor Adam. The teacher was talking about how what happened in class today was humiliating for him. He wondered if Adrian was really just a high school student. Adam was very shocked that a guy who had never even seen monsters was able to single-handedly defeat 120 monsters. It was indeed very strange because Adrian had never seemed special to anyone. Adam explained that Adrian was an orphan and lived in a small orphanage located in a very dangerous area. Chris suggested that the guy might be a spy, but the instructor quickly refuted this, saying that he had already conducted his own investigation and had not found anything strange. Moreover, it is unlikely that the spy would attract so much attention with his behavior and enter Valhalla. Adam remembered that Chris told him about Adrian's request after defeating the monsters, and the instructor decided to broach the topic. He found the boy's request strange since he himself could have gotten in after the first semester, but he decided to offer his help and negotiate with the director about it. The instructor believed that if the guy visited this place earlier, nothing bad would happen. Chris said that he was worried about there being so many geniuses in his class, to which Adam, rushing to console the teacher, said that in another class there was a student from the Ventric family. This guy is from the main Ventric family, and his name is Bob Ventric. The teacher heard that this guy was expelled from the British Academy because he was causing trouble. This news made Chris calm down and realize that things weren't as bad in his class as they were in the neighboring one. Let's get back to what's happening between Adrian and Roxy at this time. Adrian turned around, waiting for what the girl would tell him. Roxy asked the boy in a determined voice to teach her how to wield a sword. The guy was completely indifferent to this request, taking it seriously. The girl continued to insist and repeated her request. The guy's face twisted in an expression of complete incomprehension at that moment. He clearly didn't expect such a proposal. The girl said that she absolutely needed to learn fencing, which Adrian had demonstrated back then. The guy listened to everything the girl said with absolutely no interest, scratched his ear, and refused. Roxy, who expected a different answer, asked why he refused, to which Adrian said that he simply didn't want to, adding that he would leave if the girl had nothing more to say. She repeated her request once again. What was happening began to irritate the guy very much. He said again that he didn't want to do anything with her. He rather rudely ordered Roxy to get away from him and, turning sharply, walked away, leaving the girl alone with herself. And so, a new school day began. All the students had already come to school. Adrian thought again about how weak his body was, that it didn't even have magical abilities. But he decided that this problem would be solved when he found what the system message told him. His thoughts were interrupted by a guy who, unnoticed by Adrian, appeared right in front of his desk. It was the 17-year-old son of the main Ventric family, Bob Ventric, and next to him stood his companion, 17-year-old Alice. Bob, with a smirk on his face, called Adrian by name, to which the guy asked him who he was. Ventric family representative then thought that the guy was very uneducated since he didn't know his family. Bob introduced himself and with an evil grimace on his face asked if Adrian wanted to become strong. If you delve a little deeper into the structure of the main families, you will notice that it is much more difficult for representatives of the side branches to obtain status compared to the main branch. Ventric family has a beaked mask, and this is what sets them apart from other families. Usually, a family has a constellation guardian of S class or higher, who protects the family. They choose a family member and give him power. But in the Ventric family, things are different. The Guardians may decide to sign a contract with a family member who is not a constellation. Thanks to this distinction, the Ventric family has enormous influence throughout Europe. This also implies that your bloodline doesn't matter at all, as a sideline can have the same power as the main line. Bob Ventric became too arrogant when he felt he had power, which led him to do bad things, and he was expelled from the British Academy. But he didn't take the problem seriously because, thanks to his pedigree, he always gets what he wants. After thinking about how he always got everything, he looked towards Alice with a nasty smile. Bob knew his family could always get him back on track, but he knew he had to get Adrian on his side first. And so, Ventric, standing right in front of the desk where Adrian was sitting, told him that he would lead the boy to his family's constellation if he was on his side. Adrian, with a completely dissatisfied face, asked if Bob was an idiot by any chance. Ventric's pried hard and he was stunned. The girl accompanying him was very embarrassed. Having come to his senses, Bob asked Adrian again what he had told him. The guy said that he was far from stupid, and he immediately understood from Bob's manner of communication that he just wanted to use him. Ventric was furious after hearing this. He called Adrian a dirty and uneducated man. In a fit of rage, he didn't notice how Instructor Adam had already entered the office. The boy was distracted only after the teacher asked him to return to his seat. Bob shouted at the instructor not to use his full name, and Adam replied that Valhalla had different rules than the British Academy. The guy got angry but did not continue the conflict. He just looked very dissatisfied and angry. He quickly headed towards the door and Alice followed him. As he left the office, he told Adrian that they would need to talk again, to which Adrian said nothing. Now all the classes are over, and the students once again leave the walls of the educational institution. This time, Adrian was thinking about how he hadn't learned anything new today. But again, he was distracted from his own thoughts by Roxy. The girl repeated the same phrase as yesterday, asking the guy to teach her fencing. The guy looked at her with a very displeased face. At this time, an enraged Bob was in the elite dorm room of Valhalla. He circled around and even broke a very expensive lamp with his own fist. Ventric thought about Adrian's insolence, how a lower class could dare to humiliate him like that. He eventually ordered Alice to call another Ventric named Larry and tell him that there was something he needed to do. The girl, without responding to Bob's order, simply lowered her gaze to the floor. The guy was already very angry at this point, and the girl's silence was the last straw. He walked up to her and grabbed her by the hair with all his strength. Without removing his hand from Alice's head, he demanded that she give him an answer immediately. In a very furious tone of voice, he asked if she still considered herself the eldest daughter of the palace family. He continued to put moral pressure on her, asking if she wanted him to throw her out of the family, to which the extremely frightened girl answered in the negative. Bob threw the defenseless girl with incredible force so that she fell with her whole body right on the floor. Ventric, without feeling an ounce of compassion for the girl, simply repeated his order again, adding that he wanted to get rid of one person. He also said that he wanted to meet the son of the Rice family, who was a second-year student at Valhalla, and demanded that a meeting be arranged with him. This time, the exhausted girl responded obediently. Let's move to Adrian's room, where he trained before going to bed. He trained his abilities to handle mana and attract magic, but nothing worked for him. He began to think that his body was just trash. Suddenly, he remembered today's conversation with Roxy, who again approached him after school with the same request. He was very unhappy with her persistence at that moment. The girl continued to follow the guy for a long time, and when he turned around, she simply repeated her request over and over again. The guy simply asked her if she was tired of following him around and if she was a parrot. This began to irritate Adrian quite a bit, and he began to think about how to make her leave. He said that the cost of one lesson would be 10 million won. The girl hesitated, and the guy said that if she couldn't afford it, then he was leaving. Then she sharply asked him to give her his phone number. The guy asked why she needed his phone, but he didn't stop her and obediently handed her his gadget. Roxy said she would write down her number there, explaining that it would make it easier for her to transfer money to him. After this, she immediately gave the phone back to Adrian, who clearly did not expect such an outcome. Turning on his phone, he saw that 100 million won had been credited to his account at once. He had a girl who could afford to pay for 10 lessons at once. Roxy asked again if the guy would now agree to teach her. Adrian, smiling slyly, said that he still wouldn't do it and simply refused to accept the money. And so, thinking about everything that had happened before going to bed, he wondered how the student could have transferred such a huge sum of money at once. He began to regret that he had refused such a sum, but quickly came to the conclusion that it was even for the best, because he would not have to reveal his secrets. Adrian knew that his main goal at the moment was to find what the system message said. He quickly got dressed, took a shovel and went to look for the secret storage. And now he is determined to start searching. Lost in thought, he thought about how he had checked everything in advance before entering Valhalla. But all the important records from 300 years ago had been destroyed. He understood that most likely only 3 parts of the records remained. Although the sources say that there are 4 of them, most likely they were located in the mountains of Valhalla. Adrian began to emit mana, which began to fill the space around him. This helped him find the records that responded to his magic. The guy could do all this, even with a tiny amount of magic. And then one part started to glow blue. The guy quickly found it. He started digging in the place where the light was coming from. This required a huge reserve of physical strength, which this guy's body did not have. But despite this, he continued to dig. The guy thought that if it weren't for the Tower of Destruction 300 years ago, he wouldn't have buried them at all. He finished excavating only at dawn. The tired guy stood near the hatch and couldn't believe that he had finally managed to do it. He quickly found the keyhole that opened the hatch leading down. Since a normal key couldn't open it, Adrian began making a key from his own mana. He did it quickly enough and proceeded to open the hatch. The guy was very exhausted but at the same time happy that he had succeeded. And so he opened the hatch and climbed down, landing on a mountain of jewels. Adrian, standing in a victorious pose, looked at all the wealth surrounding him at that moment. Now he could stop worrying about money for a long time. But he came here not only for riches, he was looking for storage stones. The guy quickly discovered them and began pouring a small amount of mana into them to activate them. In return, they gave him even more magic. Now that it was time to go back, he thought about how to get all this money and gold. A new school day has begun at Valhalla School. Since Adrian worked physically all night instead of sleeping, he did not have time to rest and came to class in a terrible state. Suddenly, Roxy came up to him. The guy even got a little scared from the surprise. Roxy, indeed, repeated the same thing like a parrot, asking Adrian to teach her the art of swordsmanship. The guy was no longer angry and calmly asked why the girl still couldn't calm down. He learned that her family, which is one of the main ones, is the best in swordsmanship. Adrian said that she will get more information from her family. To this, Roxy replied that she wanted to learn from him, and no one else would suit her, since Adrian was the best in swordsmanship of anyone she had seen. The guy became embarrassed and asked what about her father, since he was the head of Chojan. The girl's expression immediately changed. She became colder, and her gaze became glassy. At this point, their conversation was interrupted by teacher Chris, who called Adrian to go to the teacher's room. The guy asked him again why exactly he should go there. The teacher said that this was related to what they talked about last time. Adrian immediately became inspired, grinned, and began to get up to quickly follow Chris to the teacher's room. Roxy felt awkward, and when the guy was already leaving, she called out to him and asked for forgiveness. She looked down at the floor, losing all hope that the boy would eventually agree to teach her. And suddenly, Adrian turns around and sets a date for the classes. He said that it will happen tomorrow at 6 in the morning on the training ground. The girl was taken aback, and the guy asked again if she had changed her mind. This question brought the girl to her senses, and she began to rhythmically shake her head from side to side. Then she said that she would definitely come. Now Adrian had already come to the teacher's room, waiting for what the teacher would tell him. Chris said that the boy had been approved for a pass to the Constellation room, and this news made the student very happy. But then the teacher said that the guy would just have to go down to the basement. Adrian, not expecting this, asked again if he had heard everything correctly. Chris answered this question in the affirmative and added that the guy would not be allowed to go below the first floor. Adrian, not listening to what Chris was trying to say next, asked when he could go there. To this, the teacher said that he could come tonight if he had the opportunity. Adrian said that he would come. The teacher was confused that the boy did not object to the ban on the second floor. He didn't think that Adrian would agree so easily. After that, Chris said that the conversation was over and the guy could go. And then night came. Chris and Adrian came to the appointed place. The guy immediately began to look around, studying the area. He noticed that there were at least 2 guards at each door. Also, all the outer walls were very well protected by all types of magic. Adrian asked if he could ask teacher Chris one more question, but the teacher gave a positive answer. Then he asked how hard it was to get down to the second floor and whether it was necessary to do something criminal to do so. The teacher said that it was not difficult and that no criminal background was needed, but if the boy did it, he would be expelled. Moreover, Adrian will go crazy before he can even leave school. He explained this by saying that the second floor contained the terrifying magic of the constellations, and if you touch it, it breaks consciousness, and the person goes crazy. The guy grinned, said that he understood everything and started moving towards the entrance. Chris could only hope that Adrian had enough sense not to go down to the second floor. The teacher only had time to shout that Adrian had 30 minutes to complete everything. The boy replied that he would be back soon and entered the building. Upon entering, he immediately opened a message in the system to refresh his memory and quickly find everything. He didn't care whether he was expelled or not, since he came to Valhalla only for this. And so he began to go down to the third floor. He walked, surprised by the fact that there were a lot of steps in this building. And so he found himself in some strange hall and assumed that it was a prison. He was sure that on the first floor there was a room of constellations, but everything indicated that it was actually a prison. While the guy was thinking, the system message appeared in front of him again, which said that Adrian had fulfilled the conditions and would be moved to the room. The space around the bewildered Adrian began to change rapidly. When he moved, what he saw shocked him. Before him stood the god of destruction, Barie, whom Adrian had fought 300 years ago in the Tower of Destruction. The guy couldn't get over his shock and simply asked if it was really Barie. The god of destruction gave a positive answer and said mockingly that this reunion should take place after 300 years. Without giving Barie time to finish, Adrian had already delivered the first blow directly to his opponent's jaw. In the heat of the moment, he dealt a fairly powerful blow, knocking the god of destruction off his feet. He shouted that it was incredible to see Barie, his face expressing genuine anger. Barie tried to stop it and asked the guy to stop, but it didn't help. Adrian's fist landed on the god of destruction's jaw again. The beaten man did not lose hope of stopping the blows, and again tried to ask the guy not to do it. Adrian, not listening to what Barie was telling him, continued to hit him and scream, telling him to die. And then the guy finally stopped, having let off all his steam on Barie. He said that he usually does not use fists to sort things out. The god of destruction thought at that moment that there would be no more blows in his direction, but he was wrong. Barie, who was lying on the floor with all his strength, he did this in revenge for what happened 300 years ago. The guy was about to strike again, but he was distracted by a question that Barie asked. He asked why the guy wasn't interested in what kind of place was around them. Then, Adrian became really interested in it. He started looking around and realized that there was nothing around, only emptiness. Barie had just risen to his feet by this time and was beginning to shake off the dust, while simultaneously telling the guy that they were in a world of imagination, or more precisely, the space in the relic. Adrian was surprised, as it turned out that in front of him stood only an incarnation of Barie in the world of imagination, and his real body had been destroyed 300 years ago. He asked the god of destruction if he had understood correctly that he had been inside the relic all this time, to which Barie answered in the affirmative. This fact meant that Barie himself had now become a constellation. Adrian's face turned into a furious grimace again, and he struck his opponent in the face again. And now, the time the guy had to stay on the first floor, allocated by teacher Chris, had expired. The teacher was already waiting for the guy at the entrance, and so Adrian finally came out, the guards checked him, and he went towards the teacher. Chris immediately asked if the guy had done anything strange. The boy replied that he, of course, did nothing because he was afraid of going crazy. After these words, the teacher told him to go home. Then Adrian simply turned around and actually walked towards the house, as the teacher had told him to. He walked, once again replaying the conversation with Barie in his head, remembering all the details. Then he asked Barie whether he was the creator of that pop-up message in the system or not. And what was it anyway? The god of destruction simply said he had no idea. For this, Adrian grabbed Barie by the collar of his suit and lifted him up, swinging his fist. Barie, frightened, said that he was telling the absolute truth, and in general, he had been locked up here for 300 years after that battle. Then the guy put him down on the ground and asked who was sending the messages then. Adrian listened attentively, as Barie said that he too had been sent a message that spoke of Adrian being reincarnated. He said that thanks to this, a suspicious person surfaced, who may have made him the owner of the Tower of Destruction. But Barie didn't know who this man was, as his memories had not yet fully returned. He asked Adrian what was in his notice, and the boy told him everything without hesitation. But he didn't understand what kind of memories he was talking about. It seemed to him that he already remembered everything that happened in the tower 300 years ago, down to the smallest detail. Barie suggested that the guy thought so because his memories had not yet returned. But this would happen soon since he had already found the weapon. Adrian, not understanding what was being discussed, asked what weapon Barie was talking about. The god of destruction replied that this place was the inner world of the 4 village swords that had become sacred relics. He added that he became a constellation because he used the sword as a relic. This suddenly sent Adrian into a fit of rage again, and he began shouting insults at Barie. Remembering all this on the way home, Adrian still could not understand how his village sword became a relic with a constellation inside. He wanted to destroy this artifact and leave it there. But he also did not want to leave Barie unattended and took the sword with him. Moreover, most likely, the new task from the system would have been impossible to complete without this sword. Once again, his thoughts were interrupted by a voice calling out to him from behind, asking if he was the winner of the Valhalla qualifying trials. Turning around, the guy saw a gang of guys who were clearly hostile. They said that they were older than Adrian, demanding respect. The gang was led by a second-year student at Valhalla Academy, and also the eldest son of the Sunrise family, Eric. Adrian, maintaining absolute, asked if bullies like them could also have younger siblings. The gang members were very unhappy with the fact that the guy wasn't scared at all. And on the contrary, he was showing arrogance. And then one guy from the gang, completely confident in his abilities and not seeing Adrian as a threat, volunteered to be the first to beat the guy up. As soon as he took the first step towards Adrian, the latter immediately kicked him in the stomach. Adrian, in anticipation of a fight, urged the guy to start quickly. He delivered the next blow by jumping into the air and hitting with the same leg, but this time in the face. The guy couldn't resist such a blow, he simply didn't have time and was defeated. The blow sent the bully flying straight into the crowd of his gang. The impact was so strong that when the guy had already fallen but continued to roll along the ground due to inertia, an impressive track was left behind him. At that moment, the boy's confidence diminished a little. Eric looked at Adrian, who already had his artifact sword in his hands. He didn't understand how the guy ended up with a weapon, since he definitely didn't have one just now. At that moment, Adrian's eyes sparkled and a slight madness appeared on his face. He said that if everyone stood like a pillar, he would smash everyone's skulls. Let's go back 3 hours to when Bob was talking to Eric in his house. He told Eric to take care of one first-year student, meaning Adrian. Of course, he promised a reward in the form of help to Eric's family. Bob said that even the use of weapons was allowed, explaining that with the help of his connections he would be able to hush everything up. Eric, without thinking twice and having no idea who Adrian was, agreed. When he left, he thought that they would easily deal with Adrian, since he was only a first-year student. And the differences between first and second years were quite significant. Valhalla students go to the Constellation Room in the second semester of their first year and sign a contract with a constellation. Only after this do they become sophomores. The thought that Adrian didn't have a contract with a constellation yet, and that he wasn't a member of a special family, which meant he didn't have a guardian constellation, was very encouraging to Eric. But everything turned out to be far from what the guy thought. Adrian continued to punch the short-haired bully. Another gang member decided that he would be the second to attack Adrian. And so the red-haired guy was already preparing, pouring his own mana into his knife. But before he could even take a step towards Adrian, he was already struck in the face by the blunt side of the sword. The bully flew into the air, flying to the side. And now the third person is trying to harm Adrian, attacking from behind. It seemed that this daredevil had succeeded, unlike the others, and he had struck. But it turned out that Adrian easily dodged, and the blow was simply delivered to the ground. Laughing at what had happened, Adrian was already swinging his sword to strike the guy in the face. Adrian hit the daredevil right in the forehead with great force. This blow caused the guy to also rise into the air and fly a decent distance. Then Eric became seriously tense, not understanding why the second-year students were losing to one first-year student. And he also did not understand what kind of strange sword technique Adrian was using. At this moment, Adrian was already waiting for the next attacker, swinging his sword, but all the gang members lost their fighting spirit. Then Adrian pointed his sword towards the gang and reminded them that he would smash the heads of those who stood there like pillars. Eric, realizing that his gang members were seriously doubting their abilities, shouted that there was nothing to be afraid of because he was an ordinary freshman. This amused Adrian a little. He said that the gang leader even had a little courage. Eric didn't like this. He swung his weapon and told the freshman to shut up. At that moment, Adrian had already put his sword in its sheath to Eric's stomach. It happened with lightning speed. The guy placed his palm on the butt of his weapon, mockingly told his opponent not to stand still, and sharply pressed on the sword using mana. Of mana hit Eric's body, and he, just like his friends before, was thrown to the side. He thought that he didn't understand how Adrian had managed to get so close to him so quickly. Falling from the blow, Eric instantly lost consciousness. He woke up to Adrian slapping him on the cheek, calling him a miserable brat. Adrian immediately started asking who they were and why they had gathered and decided to fight him. Eric, calling Adrian hard of hearing, aggressively repeated that they were his senior sophomores. Adrian asked if a bunch of second years with guns attacking a freshman was normal for their gang. Adrian also demanded to know who sent them, But Eric, hesitating, replied that they simply wanted to wipe the nose of the best first-year student at the Valhalla qualifiers. Adrian said with a sneer that he was going to cry, noting that it sounded ridiculous and like a gangster tribute. After that, he took the bag, started to leave, and told Eric to clean everything up. Eric, starting to lift the body of the earth, said that Adrian would no longer be able to attend school normally, since he would be expelled as soon as they found out about this incident. Adrian replied absolutely calmly that he didn't care, because people would only find out about it if Eric himself told them. He added that Eric's gang's reputation would be damaged if everyone knew that a crowd of seniors had come to beat up a freshman and he had taken them out, an argument that made Eric very angry. Adrian added that Eric should think carefully before telling anything if he wants to continue going to school and join the guild. After this, the guy calmly left, leaving all the gang members lying on the asphalt. And so the morning of the next day arrived. Bob Ventric waited impatiently for a call from Eric, hoping for good news. Finally, the sophomore called. Bob greeted him as an older man, showing feigned respect, and asked if they had beaten Adrian well. When Eric said that he was turning down the job, this shocked Bob, as he had not expected this at all. Bob, no longer trying to appear respectful, asked again what Eric had told him. The second-year student said to stay away from anything related to Adrian. Eric was about to hang up, but Bob told him to wait and began to suggest an alternative plan. He said that if Adrian beat up his gang, then they could simply report it to the administration, and if there were still visible wounds, then this would be evidence. Bob also added that in this case, he would also pay the entire promised amount and try to ensure that the Ventric family would finance Eric. Eric himself already knew the answer to this proposal. He replied that they would not do that because his gang would never be able to restore its honor after that, after which he hung up. Ventric again did not expect a negative answer to such a proposal. His face expressed anger and incomprehension. In a fit of rage, he threw his phone on the floor, causing the gadget to shatter into pieces. Bob, with his head bowed in his hands, called Alice asking if she had contacted Larry. The girl replied that she had conveyed everything, but since he was far away, it would take him time to get to them, which made Bob even more angry. At this time, Larry was in Mexico at the Olivia Academy. He, Blue on a pile of students he had defeated after another fight, learned that Bob wanted Larry to fly to Korea. He learned that Bob needed him to deal with a man named Adrian, and for this he would receive a reward that had already been prepared. Larry's scarred face twisted into a mentally ill expression. He really liked this proposal. Fast forward to 6 o'clock the next morning, straight to the gym. Adrian had just arrived and was ready to start training, but he got scared when he heard Barchie's voice. For a second, he was stupefied because he didn't understand what was happening. Barchie said that he was in a sealed sword and did not understand why Adrian was so surprised. Adrian said he was afraid that Barchie had somehow managed to get out, because then he would have had to beat him again and put him back. The guy started stretching before training and at the same time asked Barchie if everything was okay with the sword. He was worried that the sword was an artifact kept in Valhalla, and they left the Constellation Room, taking it with them. Barchie said there was no need to worry because he had left a line there, but Adrian said that was exactly what he was afraid of. Adrian asked where Barchie learned to create replicas, to which he replied that it happened when he woke up and lost all his power, but from the very beginning he could create replicas. Engrossed in conversation with Barchie and continuing his warm-up, Adrian didn't notice Roxy entering the gym. Opening his eyes, he saw a girl in front of him who was already ready for training. The guy greeted the girl and was glad that she came after all. Roxy asked again if he would teach her how to wield a sword now that she was here. Adrian said no, adding that they would start by pumping up her stamina. The girl asked why, and the guy replied that she could leave if she didn't want to. Roxy immediately said that she would do everything. Then Adrian smiled and told her to start stretching. The girl began to do exercises, and Adrian reflected on the strangeness of modern training methods. He thought it was wrong that everyone paid so much attention to mana, but didn't pay attention to stamina. Even Roxy, who had a huge amount of mana, had extremely low stamina. While Adrian was thinking, Roxy had already finished stretching. Then they began a full-fledged workout, starting with push-ups, which were difficult for the girl. Then there were squats. Roxy did regular ones, and Adrian did squats with dumbbells, since his physical strength was already on a completely different level. Next comes an exercise for the arm muscles using dumbbells. After all this, the girl lay down on the floor, trying to catch her breath, and thinking that this was the end of the workout. But Adrian had other plans. He said they were just getting started. The girl, thinking it was a joke, asked again what the guy said. Adrian said that they still had 20 kilometers to run. The girl couldn't believe her ears but agreed, although she had practically no strength left. It was time for school. And before class, Adrian reflected on how even though the training had been more difficult this time, Roxy had still managed to do it, meaning her powers were worth developing. At this moment, the girl sat motionless at her desk. She was completely exhausted at the very beginning of the day, and so the lecture began. A high-class instructor and teacher of spatial monsters, Olivia, entered the class, who immediately ordered everyone to be silent. She said that today they would have a simple written test, which she warned about. All the students listened to her attentively. Everyone started working. Adrian finished faster than anyone else. Olivia announced that time was up and that the tests needed to be passed forward, starting from the back desks. She said that today's test will not affect the students' grades, but will be used to assess their knowledge. After that, she said goodbye to everyone and left the office. At this point, Barie contacted Adrian, asking if the guy was sure he could write such answers. Adrian thought it was awkward that Barie was watching him while he did the test. Only then did the god of destruction explain to the boy that he could read his thoughts regarding himself. Having understood the situation, Adrian said that he only answered as he knew. At this point, Olivia had already started checking the work in the teacher's room, and it seemed like all the work had been done well. But one piece of work really angered her. She couldn't understand whether they could really be considered answers at all. Teacher Chris, who had just made coffee and was about to take a break, passed by. He saw that Lily was very unhappy about something and felt angry. The teacher asked if she was currently checking his class's tests, to which she replied yes. She said she had assigned the students to learn how to properly kill monsters in preparation for the combat simulation in the next class. Olivia adding that the class was quite strong. There are children from 3 main families in the class, and everyone did quite well. Chris said that since everything was great, he would move on, and Olivia gave her approval. As soon as he walked away and was about to take a sip, he heard a sharp cry behind him, which made him splash the drink. He turned around and saw that Olivia was screaming. She was screaming that she didn't understand how the student dared to call these the correct answers. Olivia added that it was Adrian, and that not only did he not try hard at his work, he was actually making fun of the class. She wasn't going to ignore it. She said that at the next lesson she would show him his work and explain that monsters can't be killed so easily. 1 week passed, and a lesson began in the battle simulation room, conducted by teacher Olivia. She told the whole class that she had brought their past tests and that most of their results were very good. But there was one flaw. After these words, she told Adrian to come to her. He obediently followed her order, while Lily herself watched him closely with a displeased face. She thrust the test forward with a sharp movement of her hand and told him to take it, adding that getting 0 points on a test of such an easy level was unacceptable. The guy objected, saying that he took the job very seriously. The first task required naming the most effective way to deal with the stone goblin. The guy wrote that his stomach needed to be cut open, and Olivia started getting irritated after that. To the second question about what a person would do if he saw 8 jungle goblins coming towards him, Adrian replied that he would start with the closest one, and the flood would pierce each one in turn. The teacher couldn't believe the seriousness and effectiveness of such methods, and she asked again if the boy really thought he could win with such methods. Adrian said that of course he could. Lily got angry. It seemed to her that the guy was just talking nonsense. Then she calmly said that since he was confident in his abilities, she would give him the opportunity to prove his methods and press the button. The space around the students began to change again. Adrian wasn't as scared as he was the first time. He saw that there was a monster behind the barrier. The teacher said that if the boy killed the monsters the same way he wrote in the text, she would correct his grade. The guy, without thinking, put the test on the table and went to take the necessary weapon. Taking the necessary sword, he went towards the enemy. Lily was sure that, although he was able to defeat 120 goblins single-handedly, he would not be able to defeat a stone goblin with 1 blow. Meanwhile, the guy was already standing in front of the enemy. The goblin decided to attack first. Grinning, Adrian swung his sword at the stone goblin. With a sharp movement of his hand, he pierced his opponent's stomach through and through. Instantly, the monster's simulation began to disappear, indicating the guy's victory. And then the monster completely dissolved, the sword fell to the ground with a crash. The teacher, not expecting such an outcome at all, could not say a word. Olivia, who, like all the students, was watching the fight, was taken aback. She could not understand how he killed the stone goblin with an ordinary sword. John didn't understand what had just happened either. Only Roxy at that moment once again admired Adrian's strength. Finding the strength in herself, Olivia finally asked how he was able to do this. The guy, not understanding why such a stupid question was asked, simply replied that he had just hit him in the stomach with a sword. Olivia understood that to defeat such a monster with a sword, one would need at least a Class A contract. And in a normal situation, it would be logical to deal with this monster with a blunt weapon. The guy asked mockingly whether his answer was ultimately correct. The teacher said it would depend on the second assignment and quickly pressed the next button. The environment changed its shape again. Adrian found himself right in front of the entrance to the tunnel, on the walls of which lit torches were burning. Lily, when the guy turned his head away from the entrance, told the guy to be more attentive and look back. 3 jungle goblins began to emerge from the tunnel. The difference between these goblins and the normal ones was that they had problems with aggression. And if you do something wrong, the goblin will use the roar skill to make the other goblins in the area come running to help. She thought that usually the mage would either try to kill everyone at once or run away. While there were only 3 goblins in front of the guy, he didn't know that there were 5 more who would attack him immediately if he made a mistake. And so Adrian, throwing the sword from one hand to the other, headed towards the enemies. She attacked the monsters furiously, putting all her strength into the blow. He struck the first blow straight into the forehead of one of the goblins. With lightning speed, he launched his next blow straight into the second goblin's throat. And so, after a couple of blows, all the monsters were defeated. Lily, seeing this, could not believe her eyes. The guy turned around and said that he had completed the second task as well, smiling. The next day arrived and Adrian and Roxy were already in the training room. They were running on a treadmill. The guy was doing as well as usual, but the girl was already feeling a loss of strength. When she had run the required distance, she fell to the floor in a star pose and tried to catch her breath. Adrian asked why she had such difficulty with such exercises, since she should have trained in her clan before. The girl replied that she usually doesn't push herself that hard. The guy asked how she was going to fight monsters if she didn't train like that. Roxy said she could use magical power by borrowing it from the constellation. Adrian expected such an answer, since such people rely on the constellations and train magic, not endurance. He wondered what such a person would do if he ran out of mana during a fight, or if the constellation simply didn't provide magic. Then he asked if Roxy thought these exercises were useless. Roxy replied that she would do them, since the guy promised that he would teach her fencing. To this, the guy asked the next question, asking if the girl was doing this just because he said so. He quickly realized that he had asked the wrong question and told the girl to forget it, adding that classes would start soon, so the training was over. The guy himself was in no hurry to leave, so Roxy asked why he wasn't leaving. Adrian replied that he would do one more approach and asked if the girl wanted to continue too. A second later, he said that it was better for her to go to school, and the girl did not object, left the hall, saying goodbye to the guy. Barie contacted him and asked if the girl's name was Roxy, to which the guy replied yes. The guy said that he agreed to train with her only because she was pestering him with her questions. Barie asked if Adrian had ever shown her his sword technique, to which the boy said no, but she had seen it during a fight in class. Barie was surprised that she was able to see the power of this technique just by seeing it once. Adrian said that he found it interesting too. At that moment, the guy heard that he was not alone in the hall and turned his head. John was lying next to him, lifting a barbell. He was just finishing his training and also noticed Adrian. Adrian asked how long John had been in the hall. He replied that he always trains here and has been here since the morning. After these words, he went to the exit. Adrian noticed that due to his predisposition, John could train for very long periods of time, which meant that his endurance was good. He told Barie that this guy's approach to training was more sensible than others. The guy asked the god of destruction what these constellations do anyway. Barie said that although he is also a constellation because he was imprisoned for 300 years, he knows nothing about others like him. He added that the guy could learn more about this if he completed the system's task. A new quest had already appeared in the system, which stated that now it was necessary to visit the Eye of the Great Forest of Valhalla, the home of Rona, but be sure to take the Heavenly Sword. He knew this was the survival site they would visit at the end of the first semester. The guy thought that if it weren't for these tasks, he would have gotten out of here as soon as he took his things. Adrian decided that he could not leave this place until he completed this task. Let's move to the United Kingdom in London to the Ventric family mansion. All over the mansion there were paintings of their relic masks and the masks themselves. At the head of the long table sat the owner of the house, Kayla Ventric, and at the other end stood a servant. He reported to the chief that the labyrinth on the border had been taken care of. To this, the woman replied that this was very good work and asked if there was anything else to report. He said he wanted to hire several competent people he had recently found, one of whom was the only survivor of the Robert clan. He then added that he had found another one, both of them A-rank contractors. Kayla approved the decision and said that after testing their abilities, they should be sent to her. The servant hesitated, not knowing whether to talk about another situation. But in the end, he made up his mind and said that he had something to tell about Bob Ventric. He said Bob called Larry to South Korea. Kayla was very angry when she heard this news. Larry Ventric was a very troubled child and a serious criminal. He committed numerous crimes using his family's name. At 19, he killed 5 people at an English academy over a simple argument. And at 20, he was already kicked out of his family. Kayla told the servant to follow Larry on Bob's behalf, to which the servant meekly agreed. She also said to warn Bob that if he was caught doing anything strange, he would be kicked out of the family just like Larry. The servant said that he understood everything, and that was the end of the report, after which he left. Kayla thought that their family's power wasn't meant for trash like these guys. Praising herself, she was sure that all this power was intended only for her. Looking at the picture of the constellation, she asked if she was thinking correctly. Let's move back to Valhalla, where all the students were already sitting in the lecture. The teacher explained that monsters often act alone, but sometimes they can team up. Adrian was bored listening to the teacher, since he already knew this information, and he was immersed in his thoughts. He thought about the benefits of his training, as he felt that he had clearly become stronger. The guy didn't understand why his body was in such bad condition before training. He recalled that when he practiced chi circulation on the first day, he could barely finish because he had less mana than an ordinary person. And the physical condition of his body was so bad that he almost lost consciousness from just a short period of working with a shovel. He wondered if something might have happened to this body in the past. The guy leaned back in his chair and decided not to dwell on this for long. His thoughts were interrupted by a hand reaching towards his desk. Adrian immediately noticed her. It was Olivia, placing a folded piece of paper on Adrian's desk, looking him in the eye. The guy immediately took the note in his hands and began to unfold it. There was nothing on the piece of paper except the word "hey." And so the classes finally ended. Chris announced some important information at the end. He said that students would be able to leave the academy this weekend if they filled out an application. And with that, he ended the lesson. After the lecture, Adrian immediately went to the teacher's room to submit a statement. He was made to stop by a voice behind him that simply said, "Hey." Adrian turned around and saw Olivia approaching him. He said one single word. "What?" In that note, to the written word "hey," he responded with the same word "what," and the girl then ignored him. He asked the girl to speak faster, as he was busy and in a hurry to submit the application. Olivia hesitated and couldn't put words together, just muttering something under her breath. The guy rudely told her to be faster and called her crazy. Olivia couldn't stand it and got angry at Adrian, asking why he called her that. Adrian said it was because it wasn't normal to piss someone off the way she did. He asked again what she wanted from him, but the girl hesitated again. She remembered that when she watched him fight, he killed a stone goblin with one blow of his sword, although such a method is not in the books. Olivia wanted to ask how he was able to kill him. As soon as she began to speak, Teacher Lilia suddenly appeared between them, who sharply asked the same question that Olivia wanted to ask. Adrian was surprised at how quickly she appeared here. He said that it was very unexpected since he thought that she hated him. But Lilia denied this, saying that she didn't care what happened then. She said that she thought that there was only one way to kill a monster, but Adrian showed her otherwise. She asked if the guy would like to become her assistant. Adrian said that he refused and went towards the teacher's room. Lilia continued to beg him and followed him. They left, leaving Olivia alone. The girl decided that she didn't really need it and didn't follow them. And so the next day came. Adrian went to the place he planned to visit. This place was Rannoch. The previous evening he had been looking for information about this place. He had to find a trading forum where he could sell the jewelry he found from the vault. Just when he found what he needed, Roxy wrote to him, saying that she wouldn't be able to come to training tomorrow. Adrian wrote that he would also be busy tomorrow. Roxy started sending a huge number of stickers. The guy didn't know how to stop her, but he resigned himself and simply continued to study the information, which said that he needed to follow the link and get a reservation and location. And now he is already going to that very place. He was looking for some old cafe. When he found it, he noticed that the cafe was really very old, that even the letter on the sign had practically fallen off. He went inside. Everything around was broken. Furniture was scattered. There were cobwebs all around. Adrian, reading the place indicated in the message, moved towards the right corner. There he saw a door and went towards it. And so he came out, leaving this abandoned cafe. He knew that this was his first time here, but he felt a strange feeling, as if he had been here before. The purple sky and the cloudy moon in particular seemed most familiar to him, similar to those he had seen 300 years ago. As he walked further, he heard a voice from behind asking him if this was his first time here. It was a tall man in a leather suit. Adrian realized that this was the worker mentioned in the letter. The man asked if this was the guy's first time here and if he knew how the market worked. Having shown the money, he replied that he had an idea. He then handed the stack of money to the man, who duly took it. He spent a large sum on this and only had 30,000 won left. The man said that Adrian could ask him questions if he wanted, to which the guy said that he wanted to ask the worker one thing. He asked where he needed to go to sell the jewelry. The worker asked if the guy was looking for an auction, and Adrian replied that he just wanted to sell it quickly. The man said that in that case, he needed to go to the third quarter, because there were many merchants there who would buy anything from him, from weapons to jewelry and much more. Adrian asked to be told which of the merchants was the most reliable. The worker recommended a merchant named Morris, as he was famous for his best prices and specialized in jewelry. Adrian asked where exactly the third block was, and the man pointed and told him to go straight ahead and not turn at the fork. The guy thanked him and was about to leave, but the man added one more thing. He handed the guy a black mask with ear flaps and said that he strongly recommended wearing it around the market. Considering the products sold at the market, almost everyone prefers to wear masks. The guy thanked the man again and turned to leave. The worker bowed after the guy and wished him a good time. So the guy arrived at the third quarter of the market, and everyone around him was indeed wearing the same masks. He noticed a merchant who was examining a diamond with the help of a special device. The guy approached him and said that the trader must have been Morris, to which he gave him a positive answer. Adrian said he had a few items he would like to sell right now. Morris said it would depend on the specific item, but if it was gold or jewelry, there would be no problem. At this point, Adrian had already put his hand into his backpack to find his goods. And then he took out a small black bag with drawstrings from his backpack. He threw it on the table in front of the merchant, saying that he wanted to sell all the jewelry in this bag. Morris slowly opened the bag and, seeing the contents, asked if these were rings. The merchant took one of the rings and began to examine it carefully, turning it over in his hand. He did this with the same device with which he examined the diamond. Morris was shocked by what he realized and exclaimed that he couldn't believe his eyes. In his hands was a genuine, magnificent ring from the era of destruction. At that moment, the merchant was only thinking about whether the rest of the jewels were so valuable. He looked again into the bag that contained all the other jewelry. Then he was simply speechless. All the jewels were from the same era. Adrian distracted him from his delight. The guy asked how much the merchant was willing to pay for all this. After these words, the merchant began to carefully examine the jewelry again. He couldn't understand where the guy got such artifacts from because, judging by his voice, he was only about 20 years old. Without thinking twice, Morris asked where the guy got these jewels from. Adrian said he had heard that it was not customary to ask such questions in this market. Morris seemed to be brought out of his trance by these words, and he replied that the guy was right and apologized to him. Immediately after this, the merchant thought that he had almost lost his reputation. Despite the significance of the jewelry and its quantity, Morris did not deceive the guy and said that he did not have enough money to buy all this and handed the bag back into the guy's hands. Adrian asked where he could get money for them then. The man pointed down the street, saying that the auction room was there. The boy asked the merchant how long it would take to sell all the tools. Morris said the time will be about 2 or 3, as many people book slots in advance, so it will be some time before the auction hill opens. Adrian asked if he would have to come in person to collect the money. After thinking about it, the guy asked how much the merchant would buy them from him for. Morris thought seriously and started counting. He quickly wrote down some number on his phone and showed it to Adrian. The guy was shocked that the price for it was so high, and the merchant was willing to provide it. Adrian continued asking questions and learned that the merchant was willing to pay 3/4 of the principal amount, which was also a huge figure. The man added that these were just his rough calculations, and if the guy went to the auction, things would go completely differently. Adrian was happy with the amount and told Morris he agreed. Morris couldn't believe what he had just heard and asked the guy again. After all, these decorations were very expensive in their time, but now they have become even more expensive. The reason for the constant price increase was the constellations. The constellations that began to appear after this era reacted strangely to artifacts from it. Thanks to this, a commoner was able to sign a contract with an S-class constellation. Morris thought that the guy was still a contracted soldier. Morris thought about this as he looked at the ring again more closely and noticed how incredibly powerful magic enveloped the jewel. He realized that the magic of that time still existed, and he also reflected on how incredibly lucky he was to have bought such meaningful things for such a small amount of money. The merchant decided that today was clearly his lucky day, but his thoughts were interrupted by a silhouette that created a shadow that blocked Morris's light. The merchant was shocked that the silhouette that appeared in front of him out of nowhere turned out to be the Black Cat, and also the owner of the market. At this time, Adrian had already stepped over the threshold of the abandoned cafe through which he had entered the market before. He took off his mask, thinking about how uncomfortable it was. The guy looked around a little to see if he had really come through this cafe, and he realized that this was it. Then he took out his phone again and looked at his bank account, which had recently been replenished with a large sum of money, which made the guy very happy. He knew that if this money ran out, there were still many different treasures in the vault. When the guy was leaving the cafe, his phone suddenly rang. The number was unfamiliar to the guy. Adrian picked up the phone and immediately asked who was on the other end of the call. The stranger turned out to be a very familiar Lily, who joyfully greeted the guy. The guy logically asked where she got his phone number. She said she was an instructor and had information, but it didn't matter because she wanted to invite the guy for a bite to eat, arranging a meeting place near the gym. She added that she would pay for everything herself and abruptly hung up, without leaving the guy a second to answer. But he decided to go there for the free food. At this time, the conversation between the black cat and Morris continued in the market. The merchant asked why the owner himself was at the market, to which the man calmly replied that their relationship was not so bad that he could not come. Morris said that although they had met a couple of times, a simple trader could not chat casually with the market owner. The owner was called the Black Cat because of his black mask on his face, which completely depicted the grace of a cat. The important man replied that it was precisely because of this attitude of Morris towards him that he liked him. Morris, ignoring the cat's phrase, again tried to find out why he came to the market. The Black Cat, leaning sharply against the table, said that it was nothing serious. It was just that the trader had submitted an anonymous bid for the auction for the first time in a long time. To which Morris, clearly expressing displeasure, said that apparently the anonymous application was not so anonymous. The man responded that the real owner of the market is not him, but his constellation, so he can receive any information. After this, he leisurely extended his hand towards the merchant and asked him to show him what he had put up for auction. Morris immediately agreed, but thought it was strange that the Black Cat was interested in artifacts for the first time, even if they were from the era of destruction. The merchant very quickly took out a bag of jewels and placed it on the table in front of the market owner. The Black Cat immediately opened the bag, took out part of its contents, and began to examine everything. The man said the item would sell for quite a large sum of money, but Morris still didn't understand what the owner was getting at. Suddenly, a system message appeared in front of the owner, saying that the constellation on the other side wanted the ring. Then, identical messages started arriving in huge quantities, and the Black Cat realized that his constellation was incredibly eager to get hold of this artifact. Let's move on to the restaurant in Valhalla, where Adrian and Lilia were eating at the same table. Lily had already started her meal, and Adrian hadn't touched his food yet, and the instructor noticed this. She decided to ask the guy why he wasn't eating his order, and the guy replied that he was just wondering why there was such a place as this restaurant in Valhalla. Lilia, happily trying to explain, said that in addition to the usual school cafeteria and the restaurant for staff, there is also a regular restaurant. She was surprised that the guy did not know about this. After this, Adrian finally started eating, replying that he simply wasn't particularly interested. And so he finally decided to find out why Lilia invited him here. After this, the woman jumped up from her seat and exclaimed a request for the student to become her assistant. Adrian said quite calmly that he simply didn't want to, but Lilia wasn't going to give in and said that if he agreed, he would receive many benefits. She said that the guy, when he went to the meeting, clearly knew what the instructor would ask, so he was obliged to listen to her. At this, the guy decided to inquire about what benefits he would receive for this, and then hope and sincere joy sparkled in Lilia's eyes. The first thing the guy would receive is a scholarship and a lot of grants. The second is the chance to write a dissertation with Lilia, and if he publishes it, he will be able to write about 3 types of monster attacks, after which the guy's name will be listed in the World Association for Monster Research. Lily told the guy about this with incredible and sincere delight, and the guy at this time did not show any emotion and just ate. He would also be able to leave the academy not once a month but twice a week. After announcing all the privileges, she asked the guy the same question again. Adrian replied that it all sounded like just an inflated ego, and he still didn't want to be her assistant. He thought that if the benefits were better, he might agree. But for now, his main goal would remain to reach the eye of the Great Forest. These words upset Lilia very much. She didn't know how to persuade him now and what else she could offer. Then an idea came to her, and she proposed a simple exchange of information to Adrian. She wanted the guy to tell her about monster attacks, and in return, she would tell him about what interested him. Adrian asked what information exactly they were talking about. Lilia immediately began talking about Roxy, who now often spends time in Adrian's company. Adrian said that he was not interested and thought that he was just helping her with training. Were they really that close? But Lilia was not stopped by his words. She continued her story, saying that she had heard that Roxy's family might soon abandon her. After Lilia ignored Adrian's words about not being interested in the topic, Adrian stood up from his seat and said he was leaving. The instructor tried to stop him, but the guy repeated that he didn't need all these benefits and information. Lily jumped up from her seat, saying that the guy should tell her at least something in exchange for this information. But Adrian said he honestly didn't care. Suddenly, the guy decided to ask another question. Why was such an infantile woman teaching so harshly? She said it would be problematic if the instructor teaching about monsters taught the lessons differently. This is done because the survival of students in a real battle directly depends on these classes. Lilia believes that this is the true duty of an instructor. After that, the guy simply wished Lilia good luck and headed towards the exit. The instructor tried to stop him and tried to get him to tell her something in return, but the guy again said that he didn't want to do it. Let's move on to the Chojan family estate. Roxy and her older brother were already sitting in front of their father, waiting for what he would say. The father said he had gathered them here to find out their intentions before participating in the sorting test. Roxy's brother, Drake, was already a member of the True History Guild and was the leader of the attack. After passing the test, the winner will get a chance to enter into a contract through the Sacred Relic. This test will show who in the family is worthy of becoming the legal representative of the family. But then the head added that the loser would be kicked out of the family, and then he asked whether his children would agree to participate after they had already learned the conditions. Drake said the word yes, and Roxy said she would do it too. Father and brother looked sharply at Roxy. They did not want to hear such an answer. The atmosphere around them became tense. After this, the father simply added that the sorting test would take place in 3 weeks and everyone could leave. As soon as Roxy and Drake left the room, the guy asked unkindly if Roxy hadn't gotten the hint. The girl asked again, and the guy repeated, "Didn't she notice her father's reaction when he heard her consent to participate?" Roxy was embarrassed, as she had noticed and understood everything perfectly well. Drake then asked mockingly if a girl who was an illegitimate child really expected to become the head of the family. Roxy gritted her teeth. She was very angry at the rude man's words. With the same mockery, the guy added that the girl had a very scary grimace. A crazy smile appeared on the guy's face, and he said that since the girl couldn't even receive the blessing of the constellation, she shouldn't even hope to win the sorting test. After which he left, saying in parting that he would make Roxy pay dearly and let her continue to spend her parents' money. As he almost closed the door behind him, poking his eye out through the crack, he said threateningly that they would meet in 3 weeks. Roxy was left alone with her thoughts, but it was clear she was serious. Her impetus was her mother's last wish before her death. Her mother, holding her daughter's hand for the last time, told her that she was to become the head of the Chojan family. And after achieving that goal, she would be able to do anything she wanted. Remembering this, Roxy was filled with energy and understood what her true purpose was. And then the next day came. All the students were already sitting at their desks and listening to the teacher. Barie contacted him and said that midterm exams were coming up soon. Barie said that if Adrian sits quietly, the constellation can also hear everything. Then he once again reminded that the teacher talks about upcoming exams. But Adrian is almost never particularly attentive in class. After this, Adrian decided to listen to Chris's speech. He said that the exams in Valhalla were extremely important. He said that at the end of the semester, students with the lowest scores would be expelled. Chris finished his speech by saying that there was no need to quit at the very beginning. And then Adrian thought about it. Adrian had no problems with the practical part of the exam, but he was worried about the theory. He couldn't leave school until he got into the eye of the great forest. Then he had an idea and turned to Barie, asking if he had listened to all the classes. He answered yes, after which Adrian said that Barie would decide the test for him. Adrian said he would just check Barchie's answers and tell him if anything was wrong. Barie was outraged and said that it would not be fair since it was an exam. Then the guy angrily answered the constellation that Barie would be the one telling him the answers, and that would be it. And then Chris said that the class was over and everyone could leave. Adrian immediately stood up and started to take his bag to leave quickly. But then someone distracted him, calling his name behind his back. Turning around, he saw that it was Roxy. She asked if there would be training today. The guy answered positively and said that such questions make him think that the girl wants to end it. Roxy said that wasn't the case at all, so the guy asked, "What was it then?" Then, without waiting for an answer to the previous question, he asked if she wanted to learn how to use a sword. But the girl was confused by this question. Adrian assumed that since the girl was training with him, she probably didn't use a sword at all, and the girl confirmed his assumption. After that, he said that he would teach her how to hold a sword correctly, even though it was not martial arts. He knew he needed to practice with his sword himself. The guy then told Roxy to come to the training room near the gym. Roxy beamed with joy after these words and agreed. And so they were both there and starting training. Adrian asked when the girl last used her sword. Roxy said she hadn't touched him since they started training. The guy suggested that Roxy had been training every day before this, and the girl confirmed this again. Then the boy told the girl to draw her blade. Roxy did it without thinking. Adrian began to tell Roxy to put strength into her index finger and pinky and grip the handle firmly. The girl immediately began trying to follow the instructions. Once she did this, she noticed a significant difference between this way of holding the blade and the usual way. She didn't even put magic into the sword, but she already felt that holding it this way was safer and more stable than with both hands. After this, the guy ordered her to attack him using everything she had. The girl obediently agreed. She instantly got into an attack position and the guy didn't even move. Roxy started using mana and warned the guy that she was about to start. She quickly ran towards Adrian and immediately noticed a change in the speed of her legs. The girl quickly tried to strike the guy, but he deftly blocked it with his sword. He then said with a smirk on his face that the girl had clearly become faster. Pushing her away, he advised her not to put more magic into the feat than necessary. The girl, striking a pose again, said she understood. She moved decisively towards the guy again. She swung her sword and struck, cutting through the air in front of her. But Adrian was able to easily dodge it, telling the girl that her move was very good. He then struck his opponent's sword sharply, causing her to lose her balance, and said that she needed to turn her body a little more when she stopped. Grinning and stretching his shoulder, the guy again said that there was no time to rest and ordered to attack. She struck him with her sword again, but Adrian easily blocked her attack with his blade. The girl tried again, striking the blade with all her might from top to bottom. But Adrian easily dodged again. The girl's sword hit the floor, leaving a deep crack in the tile. Roxy continued her attempts, thinking that she had become much stronger thanks to her training with Adrian. The training continued, Adrian was happy, and Roxy was really determined. They had been working long and hard enough that the floor around Roxy was already covered in cracks. The girl was very tired and stopped, out of breath. And Adrian wasn't tired at all. He only said that an hour of training had already passed. After these words, Roxy collapsed on the floor and began to reflect on how her skills had significantly improved since she entered. But looking at Adrian, who was still full of strength, she understood that she was still very far from him. At this time, the guy put away his weapon and began to warm up after training. The girl stood up resolutely and asked if Adrian would be able to spar with her again. Adrian said he didn't know yet. He thought that sparring with her was actually useful and that it was fun to teach her since she had talent. The guy felt that she was familiar with sword art back at the ceremony, as she used a similar technique. Looking at her, he realized that if they had lived 300 years ago, she would definitely have been worthy of being his student. Noticing that the guy was thinking for a long time, Roxy repeated her question about sparring. Adrian grinned and decided to joke by saying that he didn't want to. Roxy hesitated, but replied that she understood him, to which Adrian asked why she gave in so quickly. The girl answered without hesitation that she would do whatever Adrian said. She knew that if she followed his advice, she would definitely become stronger. The guy didn't expect such an answer and said that then training was over for today. And so, 2 weeks passed, the day of the exam arrived, all the students had already gathered at the stadium. Olivia recalled that the last time she was in this place was during the ceremony. John wondered if all the students around him were first years. He had no idea that there were actually so many of them. And Adrian didn't understand at all why they were gathered here. Barie contacted him and said that his class teacher had spoken about this about 2 weeks ago. Adrian still couldn't understand anything. When suddenly the teachers appeared, Adam said that he would now tell about the midterm exams of Valhalla. He announced that this year, the practical part of the exam is clearing a dungeon. The space around the students began to change dramatically, and Adam continued to speak. He said that the students would split into teams and go to an artificial dungeon. The instructor added that students can divide themselves into teams, adding that a team should have approximately 8 people, but everyone has the right to decide for themselves whether to make the team larger or smaller. Teachers will only evaluate the students' contribution to clearing the dungeon and the criteria for disqualification, all within 5 hours. Adam then said that whoever fails to complete the test within the allotted time will be considered as having failed the exam. After his speech, he suddenly shouted that the exam was starting. The teachers watched closely as the students divided into teams. Chris told Adam that, as expected, the students panicked. At this time, Olivia was already gathering her team. She was calling people since there weren't enough of them on her team. She understood that she shouldn't choose someone who is better than her, because 5 hours is quite enough for a dungeon of this level, and the main thing is to prove yourself while passing the dungeon. And so, she found the required number of people and said that it was time for them to begin the passage. Adam expected that the students from the 5 major families would quickly understand the principle of this exam. And that is what happened. But students from ordinary families go in teams of 20 people, but still, most often in a group of 8 students. They also had conflicts, as the team could become unbalanced. After finishing his thoughts, Adam told Chris that they needed to get ready to evaluate the students, since in about 30 minutes everyone would be entering the dungeon. At this time, Adrian noticed how the teachers immediately began writing something in their notebooks as soon as someone entered the dungeon, and he realized that grading began immediately. Turning back, the guy saw Roxy, who was standing alone and perhaps was not included in any of the teams. Adrian decided to approach her. He asked if she had joined any team, to which the girl replied no. Then the guy said that almost everyone had already entered the dungeon. What was the girl going to do? She replied that she would do what Adrian told her. These words stunned the guy. He clearly didn't expect to hear that. The guy laughed in his thoughts at the fact that after their last training session, the girl followed his words like a sword. He then told her that he would go to the test alone, after which he turned around and began to walk away. Roxy asked if she should go alone or join one of the teams, to which the guy replied that she should do as she wanted. But he thought the exam wouldn't be difficult. He headed towards the entrance to the dungeon, and the girl began to think about what she should do. And then one guy who was already on one of the teams noticed her. He approached her and asked if she was the same Roxy. The girl had already made her decision at that moment. The guy said that if she hadn't found a team yet, she could join them, and all his teammates smiled friendly after these words. But Roxy simply apologized to this proposal and firmly said that she would go alone. She then went to the entrance of the dungeon and started to open the door, but the guy tried to stop her, saying that she could be disqualified if she couldn't, to which Roxy replied that she could handle it, especially since Adrian said it wouldn't be difficult. The guy was afraid for the girl and once again tried to reason with her, shouting at her to stop and not do this. But Roxy was determined and simply closed the door, ignoring the guy's words. In the observation room, all the teachers kept a close eye on all the students. Some groups had already encountered monsters, and even more attention was paid to them. Students were assessed quickly. Most of them did not receive more than 3 points. Chris watched Adam quickly evaluate the students. He knew the instructor always evaluated everyone quickly and without errors. When Adam was still a soldier, he was called a pure master, as he was a legendary contractor with a 99% success rate in clearing dungeons. Chris respected teacher Adam because he understood the basics of clearing better than anyone else, and that is how he evaluates his students. Adam, meanwhile, watching the students, thought that this year was quite good. He noted that members of 5 families stood out in particular, but among them, the most outstanding is Olivia. She was able to skillfully coordinate the actions of her team, assessing everyone's abilities with great accuracy and issuing commands. There was a moment when their team was attacked by a large orc, but thanks to Olivia's command that the sword-wielding students should act, they easily blocked the attack. Olivia also did a great job of maintaining team spirit, encouraging everyone. She gave commands to the archers at the right moment. Thanks to this, they were able to stop the monster a little. At that very moment, Olivia herself struck Orc, jumping out of the crowd. This plan helped this team pass the test and destroy the monsters with ease. Adam admired the way she gave commands and acted with such precision and skill. He understood that despite the fact that she spent most of her time giving commands, she herself participated in such a way as to get points. Adam thought that if Olivia was already showing such results on her midterms, then reaching the top was just a matter of time for her. He remembered the qualifying tests and thought that if Adrian hadn't won back then, Olivia's reputation would not have been tarnished. At that moment, he wanted to keep an eye on the guy, so he went into search and typed in his name. But the program showed that this student was not found. Adam knew that this could not be, since the system was working properly. And at that moment, a shocking thought came to him, the truth of which he did not want to believe. He decided to check the list of people who had already completed the exam, and Adrian was already on that list. Instructor Adam was very shocked. He could not understand how a first-year student had passed this test alone in only 23 minutes. Even though Adrian had shown an incredible result at the qualifying rounds, Adam still couldn't believe that a 17-year-old boy was capable of such a thing. Then the instructor decided to watch the recording of the test. The video showed a huge crowd of goblins and orcs attacking the guy at the same time. Adrian was completely relaxed and simply began to massage his shoulder. And then, after a couple of seconds, he suddenly started running towards the crowd. The monsters also did not stop moving towards the guy. Instantly approaching the crowd, Adrian swung his sword straight at the crowd, his eyes flashing with madness. He struck and hit several goblins at once. At that moment, one monster was crawling along the ceiling and approaching Adrian in the hope that he would not notice it. But for Adrian, this was nonsense. With the next blow, he cut open the goblin's head. After that, his face seemed to take on an incredibly calm look. Immediately after all the monsters were destroyed, two huge orcs appeared in front of the guy. They immediately tried to hit the guy at the same time, swinging and hitting with large bats. But the blow was made on the floor, which even cracked after the blows. At this time, Adrian, who was able to dodge the blow very easily, had already jumped on the monsters from behind, swinging his sword. Again, with one blow, he destroyed these two thugs. The guy killed all the monsters in his path without getting tired, and the teachers watching all of this were simply in incredible shock. And now the last round has come. A huge metal golem appeared in front of Adrian. Adam knew that this was a special golem, designed specifically for the exams, and it was designed just right for the strength of 8 people. The golem suddenly tried to hit the guy with its huge hand, but the guy just grinned and was already preparing to strike with his blade. He channeled all his magic into the sword and delivered an incredibly powerful blow straight into the golem's body. The monster was immediately defeated and began to disappear. At this point, the exam was over for Adrian. Adam realized that first place rightfully went to this guy. After some time, other teams began to emerge from the dungeon, having completed the exam. Some students were depressed and tired, while others emerged from the test with enthusiasm. Roxy had also long since finished her midterm exam dungeon. And so some time passed, and already in the teacher's room, Chris began to look at the lists of those who had passed. He was shocked when he saw the results. The teacher spoke to Adam saying that, as expected, Adrian was in first place. The instructor replied that it was indeed obvious. Everyone knew this guy would come in first place, but no one expected him to be able to complete the test so quickly, especially on his own. Adam said that if Adrian grows up and comes into the industry, Korea could have a title called One again. Chris asked Adam if he understood exactly that this title was the title of the strongest contractor in the world, to which the instructor answered positively. The instructor came out of his thoughts and said that most likely such thoughts came to his mind because they had not had any geniuses for a long time. After discussing Adrian, Chris said that it was also a big surprise that Roxy came in second. Adam didn't know what happened, but he was surprised that the girl went to take the exam alone, like Adrian. The girl also coped with the tests quite quickly, although she received many injuries. The instructor said he knew Roxy was very hardworking, but he didn't think she would go into the dungeon alone. Adam then pointed out that if this exam had been based on teamwork, Olivia would have definitely gotten the highest score. Despite Adrian and Roxy's strong performance, when the lists come out, Adam would be reluctant to advise others to follow their example, as ordinary students would not be able to replicate it. Chris completely agreed with Adam's opinion. The teacher recalled that when he worked at the Chojan Guild, he certainly didn't notice anything special in the girl. She simply practiced a lot and diligently. After that, the thought occurred to him that Roxy decided to go to the dungeon alone because of Adrian. But he quickly discarded this assumption, as it seemed nonsense to him. And so the next day, the list of those who had taken the exam was posted in Valhalla, and a crowd of students immediately flocked to the stand to find out what score they had received. Bob Ventric was also looking at the list with Alice, and when he saw that Adrian was in first place, he became very angry. He asked the girl if Larry was already in Korea. The girl answered yes. Then the guy's eyes flashed with rage, and he ordered the girl to immediately call Larry and get ready to leave. And so they arrived at the meeting place with Larry. As soon as they entered the building, Bob was immediately stopped by Larry, who greeted him. The guy said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Bob and Larry sat down at the table, with Alice standing behind them, and Larry immediately attacked the food with a huge appetite. But at some point he stopped eating and, with his mouth full, asked Bob what kind of person this Adrian was that needed to be dealt with. Bob smirked and replied that Adrian was just a dumb freshman from the orphanage, but he had seriously embarrassed Bob and needed to be paid back. Larry listened attentively, continuing to stuff his mouth with meat. Then he asked abruptly if he could kill this Adrian. Bob said he would leave it up to Larry himself. Larry said that things weren't as easy as they used to be, and he needed to prepare the scene carefully. He then pointed his finger at the frightened Alice and said that last time, because of this girl, with whom he was dealing with then, he had to fight with the Palace family. He then added that because of the rapidly spreading rumors, he had to kill a couple more people. Alice was listening to all this at that moment and was incredibly scared. After he said this, he continued eating, saying that it was always very difficult to enter Valhalla. To all this, Bob replied that he would do everything in his power to set the stage. Larry laughed and said he expected a good reward for this. And so a week passed, and Adrian was again carrying a notice to leave school this weekend. At some point, Barie contacted him, asking if it was true that he was resigning again And the guy replied yes. Barie logically asked why he was bringing the statement again if he had already gone out this week. And Adrian replied that there were nuances here. Adrian said he heard that if you perform well on the midterm or final exams, you will be allowed to leave Valhalla again. The boy was determined to find his remaining notes. Barie asked where exactly the boy was heading. And so the weekend came, the guy went to Suwon. He walked forward along the path, looking at his phone. He looked at his phone, looking for the route, and finally found it. The guy was suddenly distracted by the voice of the man who was standing right in front of him. The guy looked up and saw a big guy named Larry in front of him. Around this time, at the market where Adrian sold his jewelry, a black cat watched everything that was happening from the window of his skyscraper. He just stood there and did nothing but watch. But suddenly his peace was broken by a message from the system, which said that the constellation on the other side was asking when the ring would arrive. The man replied that it would be here soon, that it was already going through standard procedures and would arrive through the portal. Suddenly, something began to happen that the black cat did not expect. Identical messages began to arrive in the system without stopping in large quantities. The man saw such behavior from the constellation for the first time. While he was thinking, something began to appear in the portal. The owner quickly approached the portal and began to examine what had just arrived. Opening the box, he saw that it was the very ring that had been causing all the fuss. The black horse was very happy that the ring had finally arrived. He hoped that the constellation would calm down when it received the ring. At that very second, he called the constellation. A message quickly appeared from the system, saying that the constellation was here. Let's get back to what's going on between Adrian and Larry. As soon as Larry stopped Adrian on the road, Adrian immediately asked who was standing in front of him. Larry just laughed at this and asked Adrian if he really needed to know this. Adrian said quite calmly that he assumed Larry wanted something from him. Larry said the guy was smart, so why else would he meet him on a remote mountain peak? Adrian asked, "Did Larry come here to get rid of the guy?" To which he grinned and said once again that Adrian was insightful. Adrian had already taken off his briefcase and started to throw it on the ground, saying that it was not a matter of insight at all. He added that anyone would have guessed this if they had seen Larry. Then he said that he realized this a couple of days ago. Larry was already at the limit of rage. He called the guy very rudely and prepared to attack. He gathered his strength into a fist, jumped, and swung at the guy. Adrian, as usual, dodged the attack with ease. This caused Larry's fist to hit the tree trunk. The tree cracked from such a strong blow. Soon the tree fell completely. Adrian watched it all calmly, and it made Larry smile. Larry said the guy was very lucky, and the guy replied that it had nothing to do with it. It was just that the hit was very slow. But this blow made Adrian think. He realized that Larry was very strong and reminded him of John. He understood that with such a fragile body as his now, it was better not to get hit by such blows. After that, he smiled and decided that the strategy for this fight would be very simple. The guy just turned around and started running. Larry was surprised. But a second later, Larry laughed and ran after the guy. Larry thought that in this situation, running was really a good choice, because if you didn't run away, you would be beaten to death. Larry then swung his fist at the guy and shouted that he would not let him go. But at that very moment, he stopped because Adrian's fist was already right in front of his face. Until the fist was so close, the guy didn't even notice that Adrian was approaching. He was shocked. And then Adrian delivered an incredibly powerful punch to the guy's face, and Larry flew a long distance away. After a hard fall, lying on the ground, Larry opened his eyes and saw that another attack from Adrian was approaching. Adrian raised his leg right above the guy's face with a crazy expression on his face, ready to strike. And so he tried to step sharply on the guy, but Larry, although he had not yet recovered from the previous blow, deftly dodged the blow at the last second. The kick was delivered to the ground, exactly where Larry's head had been lying a moment ago. Larry moved from a lying position to a sitting position. He looked at the place where Adrian's foot landed. He was shocked to see that the ground from his impact had formed a hole and cracked. Adrian, mocking Larry, said that Larry was just lucky to dodge it. Larry didn't like these words at all. He started to bare his teeth. Larry stood up, then he asked Adrian what he did. Adrian grinned and said that he was the best in Valhalla, and it would be useful for Larry to know that. This made Larry even more angry. He wondered what the guy had been injecting himself with to become so strong. Let's fast forward to Larry's childhood, which took place in the Ventric family home. Larry's parents used his talent to raise their status at least a little. They forced him to drink a huge amount of different elixirs, since his talent is an innate affinity for elixirs. Larry drank everything his relatives gave him time and again. They bought him elixirs that cost hundreds of millions. By the age of 16, the boy had become stronger than an adult. His parents wanted to use him to gain recognition for their family, but none of them expected that Larry would go against their system because he would not want to spend his whole life under control. And this happened. He dealt cruelly with his own mother. Then Larry brutally killed his father. Larry thought that his strength was unrivaled, so why should he worry about his family's recognition? When Kayla learned about this incident, she was furious, but after calming down, she made the right decision for herself. Larry was then banished from the Ventric family. But the guy didn't care about it. He started carrying out orders for murders, and after that he had good money. After breaking up with his family, he even became stronger. When Bob Ventric placed the order and offered a huge sum, Larry's interest in Adrian was not limited to money. He became genuinely interested in Adrian. Adrian attracted such widespread interest because he took first place in the Valhalla qualifiers, and also because he sent all the guild representatives to hell. Larry just wanted to amuse himself by playing with Adrian for a bit. But something in Larry's plan went wrong. He didn't understand. And in the end, he was the one who got beaten up. Larry couldn't figure out who this guy was. Wiping the blood from his face, Larry asked Adrian what he had been taking to become so strong. He added that he doubted there were such cheap elixirs that an orphan like Adrian could afford. To which Adrian simply said the word "what?" Then Adrian laughed really hard at this, which left Larry stunned. Having calmed down his laughter a little and brushing tears of laughter from his face, Adrian asked if Larry meant steroids. Then Adrian said that Larry was just a crook who pumped himself full of some crap. These words made Larry angry. Larry asked if the guy meant to say that he became so strong without the help of elixirs. Afterwards, Adrian rolled up his sleeves and told Larry that he had become strong through hard training and exercise. Adrian also said that he can compare Larry to John, but he believes that comparing a natural-born strongman and someone like Larry is not worth it. These words made Larry even more angry. He began to shake with anger. Then Larry grabbed the hilt of his blade. Adrian watched this completely calmly. Larry began to pour magic into the blade, and himself, he was already standing in a pose indicating readiness for battle. Adrian was confused by the guy's aura. He wondered if it was really magical power. Larry felt himself growing stronger with each passing second, and rage flashed in his eyes. Before Larry could finish his speech, he raised his head, and there Adrian was already flying towards him with another blow. Adrian's knee landed squarely on the side of Larry's jaw. This incredibly powerful blow sent Larry flying back quite a distance. Larry would have flown further, but he crashed into a tree with his back, at which time Adrian said that only very stupid people would wait while their opponent was preparing to attack. Without wasting a second, Adrian was already swinging his fist to deliver another punch to the guy's face. Larry didn't have time to dodge, and this powerful punch landed right in his face, causing the tree he had crashed into earlier to break. Adrian grabbed the guy by the hair and lifted him up a little, ignoring Larry's requests, and stopped. Adrian squatted down next to Larry, still holding him by the hair. He said that the guy shouldn't lose consciousness yet, called him an idiot swallowing elixirs. The guy grinned and added that he would have forgiven the offender if he had just wanted to fight him. But Larry said that he wanted to get rid of him. Shaking his fist, Adrian said he wanted to ask something. Larry tried to say something, but he was instantly interrupted by a punch to the face from Adrian, whose face took on a mad look. Let's move on to the Valhalla dorms, and more specifically to Bob Ventric's room. Bob sat on his couch thinking that Larry had probably already dealt with Adrian, a thought that made Bob very happy. He also, knowing Larry's character, was sure that he would not only beat Adrian but also kill him. But it would still be difficult to clean up after him. It's good that it didn't happen at school. Then Bob, with a joyful smile on his face, called Alice and ordered her to order him a car. And finally, Bob's phone started vibrating. It was Larry calling. Bob was anticipating good news. Bob picked up the phone and immediately asked if Larry had dealt with Adrian yet. He heard nothing in response and began to worry and try to call Larry to the phone. But then he heard Larry making terrible wheezing sounds and unable to say anything, which scared Bob. Then he heard a voice that suggested Bob didn't understand what was happening. It turned out that the voice belonged to Adrian. Bob immediately recognized it when he heard it. Then Larry's wheezing could be heard again, to which Adrian said that he would now try to translate what the beaten man was saying. Adrian then mockingly said that Larry was asking for 2 candles to be lit for him if he died. Then Adrian told Bob to wait for him. Ventric was incredibly scared after what Adrian said. He took it as a threat. In response, Adrian did not hear anything from Bob. He asked if Ventric could hear him. But after these words, he heard a dial tone on the phone. It was Bob hanging up, ending the conversation. Adrian laughed and said that it was very rude to hang up right away and called Bob a bastard. Having finished talking with Ventric, Adrian stood up and began to think about what to do with this beaten guy. At this moment, Bob Ventric was sitting nervously on his sofa, thinking about what had just happened and what to do next. Alice at this moment brought him hot tea. Coming closer to Bob, she repeated again that the tea was ready, but Ventric did not answer this time either. But after repeating her words again, Alice heard Bob start shouting, telling the girl to shut her mouth. The girl listened to Bob, said okay and left. This situation makes Bob even more angry. Bob sat there repeating Adrian's name over and over again, completely confused as to why his plan had failed. He sat and thought that he could not even imagine such an outcome of events. He did not know what to do next and how to finally deal with Adrian. Bob realized that the guy was behind all this. He began to blame Larry for everything that happened. Then Bob realized that this situation would definitely reach the Ventric family. It was only a matter of time, he was afraid, because everything that day got out of control. But at that very second, a brilliant thought came into his head. He realized that everything might not be so bad yet. Bob figured that since the guy was an orphan from the bottom, there was no way he could contact his family, and they certainly didn't find out anything. But Bob still decided that it would be better to lie low and just keep an eye on Adrian for now. Let's return to Adrian, who was already walking along the forest path, leaving Larry in splendid solitude. Barie contacted him and asked if the guy had forgotten his sword, even though it was stupid. Adrian replied that he would post the video when no one would expect it. Barie listened attentively and decided to ask why he didn't just kill him then. Adrian replied that in his past life, 300 years ago, he would have done exactly that. But now it might be a problem, since he was an ordinary student. Barie suddenly remembered what he wanted to say and said that he was worried about something. He said he was worried specifically about the magic Larry had tried to use. This magic was surprisingly very familiar to Barie. He told Adrian about it. The boy, of course, immediately asked Barie about it. But Barie said that if he had released more magic, Barie would have been able to tell for sure. But he was sure that he was familiar with such magic. Barie asked Adrian if he felt anything. The guy remembered that 300 years ago, monsters sacrificed cows and dogs to use such black magic. And Barie replied that Adrian was not very good at judging people by their magic. The guy got angry at this and ordered Barie to shut up. Then, Adrian suggested that the other side of the blade that guy Larry was talking about was connected to that power. Barie said that was quite possible. After Adrian and Larry's fight, when Larry was already beaten, Adrian asked who sent the guy to attack him. But Larry couldn't speak because of his broken jaw. He let out a growl. After this, Adrian realized that he had knocked the guy's jaw out, and at this rate he wouldn't get an answer. Then he quickly grabbed Larry by the jaw and pushed it back in with a deft movement of his hands. Larry then touched his jaw with his hand and realized that he could speak. Adrian repeated his question again. Larry didn't even know if he should answer it. Receiving no answer, Adrian sighed deeply. He squatted down in front of Larry, took his hand, and said that he had put his jaw back in place so that he would answer his questions. Adrian's eyes flashed with anger again, and he told the guy that silence was clearly not the best solution in this situation. Larry didn't understand what Adrian wanted to do. He asked him in fear why he was holding his fingers. Immediately after this question, Adrian, with a smirk on his face, sharply pulled the guy's hand. Larry started screaming loudly. His finger had just been broken. Adrian told the guy to speak faster before he broke the rest of his fingers. Larry thought about it, grinned, and replied that Bob Ventric hired him. Adrian thought he wondered if Bob had gotten to him last time or not. Then Adrian, having said that the guy didn't look like a Valhalla student, asked more questions about who Larry himself was and where he worked. Larry chuckled, saying that Adrian certainly wouldn't be satisfied with such an answer, but he himself would find out the answers to these questions sooner or later. Adrian calmly threatened to break Larry's second finger as well. After that, the smile disappeared from Larry's face. He fearfully replied that he was Larry from the first kind of the Ventric family, who carries out orders as a hired hand. Adrian thought he had heard that answer somewhere before, and he asked Larry mockingly if he found it fun being a mercenary or just a paid hooligan. Larry, without answering this, asked Adrian a counter question, calling him just a lucky guy. Are all people trash in the guy's eyes? Without waiting for an answer, Larry immediately said that the constellation that the first kind works with is the reverse side of the blade. But of course, Larry also has a contract with it. Feeling more confident, Larry said that if he had managed to charge his magic, the outcome of the fight could have been completely different. Laughing, Adrian said that if Larry had shut up after answering the questions, the guy would have left him just like that. But Larry believed in himself too much. Adrian grabbed Larry's jaw again, but this time to knock it back, and then he walked away. And so, on his way back home, Adrian was looking for information about this group of mercenaries. Everyone said that they were very evil. Adrian was upset that he still couldn't find his notes and Bob still wouldn't leave him alone. Adrian thought about how he could deal with this Ventric. He realized that he needed to use technology. Even during the conversation with Larry, He managed to turn on the voice recorder and record everything. Then Adrian began to think about where to upload all these recordings. He decided to call Lilia. She clearly did not expect a call. She immediately picked up the phone. Her eyes lit up with hope. She asked if Adrian was calling her because he had finally decided to become her assistant. Adrian replied that it wasn't that. He wanted to know if Lilia knew any journalists. The very next day, all the newspapers carried the news that a former member of the Ventric family had attacked a freshman on orders from Bob Ventric, but the student was able to fight back. Reading this, Adrian said that this is what he calls modern warfare. Barie told him that for a man who lived 300 years ago, Adrian had somehow gotten used to modern technology too quickly. Adrian replied that after Reincarnation it was difficult for him at first, but he mostly scrolled through social networks and watched the news, and this helped him. Reading all the news about yesterday, Adrian realized that he wanted to take revenge only on Bob, but it turned out that he had screwed the entire Ventric family. Then Adrian thought about the fact that the reporter Lilia introduced him to turned out to be an important person. Adrian did not think that this story would take such a turn. And then he came across a video with a message from the head of the Ventric family. In this appeal, Kayla said that she offered her deepest apologies to the attacked student and the entire Valhalla Academy. She then said that the attack was carried out by Larry, who had already been expelled from the Ventric family. Larry himself also later said that the statement that Bob Ventric was the customer was false. Having initially slandered Bob, Larry was simply trying to get out of the situation. Because of this, they believe that the Ventric family was not involved in the incident. But the attack was carried out by a former member of the Ventric family, so they can't just ignore what happened. Kayla said that, as the head of the Ventric family, she would personally visit the victim and apologize to him. She went on to say that even if Bob wasn't involved in the attack, they believed he was still connected to the attacker. They brought him home to conduct an internal investigation into the Ventric family. They will try their best to eliminate all unnecessary suspicions. After these words, she bowed to everyone as a sign of respect and left. As she was leaving, all the reporters were shouting and asking questions, trying to stop Kayla, but she didn't even look at them. Bob himself also saw this official appeal. He was incredibly scared by what he heard. He continued to stare at the phone, and suddenly his father called him. Bob picked up the phone and greeted him. Father told Bob that he had to return to England for a while. It was a family order. Bob agreed, although this scared him even more. Bob was very angry at what was happening. He began to squeeze the phone. Trembling went through his body. Alice, standing nearby, simply looked down at the floor and did not move. And then the next day came. Adrian watched the video of Larry being taken away by law enforcement and reporters asking questions. In this video, Larry said that the Ventric family is right and he is the only one who stands behind the attack. Adrian was surprised that Larry swallowed his pride so quickly. Ventric family really pissed Adrian off. As he walked to class, he thought that meeting the head of the Ventric family and her apology would be very awkward. Just thinking about it made Adrian feel sick. Soon he remembered Lilia's help and decided to invite her to a cafe. When they met there, Lily's eyes sparkled with joy again, and Adrian just calmly drank his drink and, noticing how Lilia was looking at him, said, "No." Lily jumped up from her seat and asked how the guy knew what she wanted to ask, and Adrian replied that it was obvious. Then Lily, pretending to be offended, asked why Adrian had called her then. Without waiting for the guy's answer, she jumped up from her seat again and exclaimed questioningly that maybe this was a date, and Adrian told her to wake up. Lily asked when they had managed to switch to the informal form of address. Adrian replied that they had been communicating like this for a long time. He went on to say that he had not called her because he was bored, but because he wanted to thank her for introducing him to the journalist. He said that he would give her some information about fighting monsters. Lilia couldn't believe her ears. She was incredibly happy. The guy then said he would tell her more if she helped him leave school this weekend. Lilia said it would be easy as pie. She added that if he became her assistant, he would be able to leave school every day. But the boy refused again. Let's move to the North Pacific Ocean, where a ship carrying prisoners was already sailing. Larry was one of them, sitting in a holding cell with his hands cuffed behind his back. Larry was angry. He didn't think he would be put on a ship and transported as cargo. He thought he might be being taken to a prison tower located in the North Pacific Ocean. Once upon a time, the S-rank constellation independently created this shelter of deprivation, a prison that turns contractors into ordinary people. But he quickly came to the conclusion that none of this mattered. He thought he just needed to shut up and sit still so that Bob could remain in the Ventric family. And if he does this, his sentence will be reduced to 5 years. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice from behind calling Larry an ugly face. Larry immediately turned his head towards the sound, and at that very moment his throat was cut with one movement of the hand. The guy screamed and started coughing up blood. The man who did this continued to stand next to him and look at Larry. Then he told Larry to die, calling him a fool, adding that the first species did not need such people. After these words, Larry immediately fell face down on the floor and died. The man looked at the boy's lifeless body for a while and left. Let's move on to the Ventric family estate. At this time, Kayla met Bob and his father with a displeased face. Bob and his father entered Kayla's office and bowed as a sign of respect. Kayla said the guy's name menacingly. Bob was very scared and sweat started pouring down his face. Kayla asked Bob what he was going to do now, to which the guy simply said that he was sorry. To this, the girl said that a simple apology would not fix the situation. This made the guy even more tense. He was afraid to even breathe. Kayla then asked the boy to tell her what exactly had driven him to do something so evil. Not receiving a clear answer, she asked if he wanted to deal with Adrian. Bob answered yes. Kayla was angry that the guy wasn't telling her anything himself, and she had to ask a bunch of leading questions herself. She stood up from her seat, saying that the boy had thought that Adrian had hurt the pride of the Ventric family. But in fact, it was only Bob's own pride that had been hurt. Getting close enough to Bob, she said that it was he who dragged the Ventric family name through the mud. She leaned over Bob and asked menacingly what they should do now. Bob fell to his knees and said he would do anything to restore their family's honor. Kayla straightened up and said the guy was talking bird. The only way to restore his reputation was to expel Bob from the family. And hearing this, the guy became even more frightened. Then Bob's father intervened in the conversation and told the chief that this would be too cruel. To this, the head said that then she could kick out Bob's father too. After this, the man himself became scared. The headmistress said arrogantly that she would kill Bob or kick him out of the family right now. But she understood that then everyone would definitely find out that it was Bob who hired Larry and tried to kill the student. She said Bob's name again and he responded obediently. Kayla said that she wasn't kicking him out yet, but ordered him to return to Valhalla and keep his mouth shut there. The leader intended to think about what had happened again when she met with Adrian. Bob bowed to Kayla again and thanked her. Before Bob and his father left, Kayla told the man to keep a better eye on his son, as his punishment would depend on his son's actions. And so they left the office of the head of Kayla Ventric. Bob and his father walked down the hallway, very angry about what was happening. The father decided to start the conversation by telling Bob to keep a low profile and not do anything rash. To this, Bob asked, hadn't his father heard what the chief had told them? Then, without waiting for an answer, Bob said that sooner or later he would be kicked out anyway when everything calmed down. But before that, he had to do something, because now nothing could stop him. Then he said that his father would have to help him, and his father looked at his son in silence, not knowing what to answer. After a couple of seconds, the father finally answered, saying that the main thing was that no one found out. Bob agreed with this. And now several days have passed since the recent events. The Ventric family would arrive soon to apologize to the guy. Adrian said that they had nothing in common. She even publicly stated in an official announcement that the incident had nothing to do with the Ventric family. Chris replied that it was still her moral responsibility to apologize to the guy. She had come all the way to Korea for this. Adrian thought that the leader would come here because she had no other choice and she wanted to take Bob's punishment upon herself. Thinking about this, Adrian realized that all this was terribly irritating him. His face expressed displeasure. Chris said he and the other instructors were also upset about it. Chris tried to put everything in order. First, they attacked the Valhalla student. Then the attacker admitted that he was hired by Bob Ventric. But then they denied everything he said. The teacher said he couldn't believe they were downplaying Adrian's recorded confession simply to protect the family and hide the truth. He added that Bob or the head of the family should be punished in any case, but their family had recently donated a large sum of money to the school. Chris simply couldn't believe that Valhalla's budget was made up of donations from large families, and if they gave enough money, the school would most likely turn a blind eye. Adrian was completely calm. He said that if that was the case, then he should talk to the head of the Ventric family. Chris was very surprised that Adrian had such a calm reaction. And finally, there was a knock on the door. Chris whispered that the boss was here and he would open the door now to let her in. He stood up, wished the guy a pleasant conversation, and went to the door. The teacher opened the door slightly, and Kayla's haughty grin was already visible through the crack. When the door opened fully, Chris met the lady and bowed to her as a sign of respect. He decided not to delay anyone and left the room, telling them not to hurry. The girl thanked him for his hospitality. And so Chris left, closing the door behind him, and the head of the family was already heading towards Adrian and stood opposite him. She greeted the guy, saying that she was pleased to meet him, and she informed him that she was the head of their family. Adrian replied that he was also very pleased to meet you. After these words, Kayla sat majestically on the sofa opposite Adrian. Adrian relaxed a little after that, and so she began her speech, talking about what happened because of Larry. She bowed her head deeply and apologized profusely to the guy. Adrian said that since Larry had already been expelled, everything was fine. Kayla continued by saying that she heard that the Ventric family was giving Adrian a hard time even at school. The boy replied that it was only that one time, so it didn't matter now. Adrian said that he had nothing to say since the head's official statement said that the incident had nothing to do with their family. Kayla listened to this silently. Kayla said that in this situation, neither the forces nor ordinary citizens trust them. Adrian scratched his ear and said that this was exactly the case, but he himself knew that it was all a lie. After that, Kayla smirked and told the guy that she wanted to resolve the misunderstandings between them. She asked if Adrian would help her. The guy, without thinking, answered that he wouldn't do it, but Kayla said that she knew Adrian would answer that way. She said that if the guy helps them now, she will give him full support until graduation. She then added that she could recommend the boy to a guild sponsored by the Ventric family, so they could continue supporting him after his graduation. She would also help Adrian become a hunter in Korea, so he wouldn't have any difficulties. Adrian smirked as he listened to this. Adrian, after waiting for Kayla to finish her speech, said mockingly that no one expected that she would try so hard to drag him in. He assumed that the leader was in despair. Kayla, hearing this, was no longer so friendly. Her face changed dramatically. The guy then said that it really annoys him that Kayla and the whole Ventric family are pretending that nothing happened. So why should the guy play along with them? Adrian then added that he didn't want a reward. His only wish was to see the Ventric family live with the shame that Bob had caused. These words made Kayla incredibly angry. Her face took on a furious look. She called the guy trash. The magic of the head of the family began to come out so strongly that her hair even stood up. She asked if the guy even knew who he was talking to now. Adrian chuckled and said that apparently the girl had finally decided to show her true face, and it must have been difficult for her to contain it. Kayla wasn't going to calm down. She continued to menacingly say that she came to this dump called school to make it easier for Adrian to convince her, and he dared to act so arrogantly. Her eyes flashed with rage and she said that she just needed to kill Adrian here and now. She said that she wanted to be generous and give the guy a good chance, but he just turned it down. Adrian listened to all this with a satisfied look. In response to the death threat, the guy mockingly told Kayla to give it a try. The Ventric family did not expect such calmness from Adrian. She asked the guy again what he was saying. Adrian raised his head proudly and asked, "Didn't the girl say that the Ventric family had nothing to do with the attack? But then why, in order to reinforce this lie, did she decide to spend a huge amount of money on him? And now she even wants to kill him." Adrian then said that he thought that was all Kayla could do, and the girl, listening to this, became angrier with every word he said. There was no response from the girl. Adrian, continuing to be in a completely relaxed state, said that if she attacked him, she still would not be able to kill her. The head of the family's magic still continued to leak out, and his hair was raised up during the entire conversation. But suddenly, the girl returned to a completely calm appearance, calmed her magic, and her hair fell back to its previous state. Kayla quickly walked to the exit, opened the door, and before leaving, told the guy that he would regret it. Adrian smirked again and said that she couldn't do anything after all and was just chatting away. Barie contacted the guy. He said that he did not want to interfere but decided to ask if the guy really had to do this. Adrian replied that creatures who think that everyone should fall at their feet in front of them irritate him the most. His eyes flashed with anger again as he said he knew what Kayla was going to do, calling her trash who was trying to put everyone on a leash. Then, Adrian said that this is why he also hates Barie, and the constellation was taken aback by such an answer. Immediately after this, Adrian stood up and went to the exit. He thought that since there were no more classes today, he could go to the gym a little earlier. And now he was approaching the hall where he was supposed to have training with Roxy. Looking up from his phone, Adrian saw Roxy talking to some guy. He decided to take a closer look at that same guy, thinking that perhaps it was someone he knew. But he still couldn't figure out who it was. As Adrian got closer, he heard the guy telling Roxy that she wouldn't be able to win the competition. He said that no matter how much Roxy trained, it still wouldn't help her against him. The guy then extended his hand towards Roxy, saying that if she wanted to stay in the family, she just needed to not follow her whims. He waited for the girl to answer and added that he didn't want to humiliate her. Roxy listened to all this with a very disappointed look. But suddenly the girl said no to this proposal from Roxy's older brother. The brother was very surprised at what was happening. He assumed a more confident stance, saying that he was giving the girl one last chance. So why was she refusing so easily? And so Roxy finally decided to answer the guy, gathering her strength. But as soon as she started speaking, she was interrupted by a voice that said that it was the guy himself who did not understand something, since he was an idiot. The brother couldn't believe that he was being contradicted. He exclaimed, "Who is calling him an idiot?" And suddenly, Adrian appeared from behind Roxy. Pointing his finger at the offender, he said that he was the idiot because he did not leave the person alone, who worked very hard. The girl's brother's face changed and he asked why Adrian was calling him names if he didn't even know who he was talking to. Adrian noted that today he sees too many people bragging about their status, but Adrian doesn't care at all who stands in front of him. The guy confidently told the guy not to dare bother students within the school anymore, and if he finished his speech then he should get lost. Then he asked Roxy if she agreed with him. Roxy immediately began nodding her head up and down in agreement. Then Roxy's brother could no longer object. He threateningly told Roxy that they would meet at the test. Immediately after this, the guy left, and the two watched him go. Roxy immediately thanked Adrian, to which he told her that it was nothing special and suggested that she start training faster. But Roxy wanted to continue the conversation and said that when she agreed in the conversation, she would actually have said something different. Then Adrian asked what she had answered then. She said that she wouldn't tell him to get lost. She would just tell him who his mother was. But before she could finish, Adrian stopped her. As they walked towards the gym for training, they discussed how they would work hard today, as they would both be unable to meet at the next training session. Fast forward to what's happening in Shinyon near the hills a week later. Adrian was already walking along the path among the trees with a shovel on his back, looking for the place where her notes were buried. Barie contacted him and asked the guy if he was going to look for his notes. Adrian answered yes. Barie asked why he needed this. If he had already found enough relics and stones in his old notes last time, the guy replied that he wanted to know how many were left. Adrian said that he thought that if he kept looking, he would find something incredible there. Barie asked again what exactly the guy meant. The guy replied that if he found something like that, he would be able to overcome the shortcomings that he had 300 years ago. Further, turning to Barie, the guy said that if he had found him earlier than 300 years ago, maybe he would not have killed him. At this time, reporters had already gathered near the Chojan family estate. They were heatedly discussing this family's selection day today. Rocky and her brother Drake were already standing in front of their father, waiting for the competition to begin. And so the father finally announced the start of the test, saying that he would now tell the rules. Looking at Drake, he said that, as he had already said, whoever passes the test will be considered the heir. He then looked at Roxy and said that whoever failed the test would be banished from their family. He then asked if Roxy and Drake were ready to begin. The guy and the girl simultaneously said that they were ready. Then the father said that the purpose of the test would be to find the double blade hidden in the mountains. The person who finds it and brings it to his father will be considered the winner. Then the father clarified that it didn't matter how they got this blade. The main thing was not to kill each other. And then the father abruptly announces the start of the test. Roxy confidently begins to run in search. Drake just smirked as he looked at the girl and said that this was not a timed test. His plan was to take the blade from the girl when she found it and take it to her father. He remembered the moment when he left Roxy and Adrian. As he walked away from them, his phone rang. Drake picked up the phone and said he was listening. The voice on the other end of the call asked what was happening with the double blade. The guy said he would have to take a selection test, so it would take a little longer. The voice said that the guy was telling him this for the second time. Then, the voice said that the guy was already late on time. Drake became nervous. He quickly began to apologize to his opponent. But he dared to ask whether the man would fulfill his promise if he could obtain the blade. The man replied that it was a promise made in front of the constellation, so he was obliged to keep it. Drake said goodbye to the man and became even more focused on his goal. He thought that this was his last chance, so it was time to go. Roxy was already looking for this blade at this time. The girl emitted mana around herself. She felt the trace of the double blade's magic. Roxy realized she needed to concentrate, which would take her 15 minutes. The girl heard someone ask if this was a magical mark from the blade. She turned around, sword at the ready, and saw Drake behind her. He asked if she could find a trail using magical traces and asked who taught the girl to do this. Roxy began to draw her blade from its sheath with a displeased look, calling Drake by name. The girl remembered how she approached Adrian with a question about magic control. Adrian said he thought Roxy knew the basics. He asked if the lightning powers the girl had mastered were basic knowledge, and Roxy agreed. The guy told her to start practicing magical field control, but not over a large area. She asked how she should do it. Adrian was a little puzzled by her question. Hadn't the girl been taught this in her family? She remained silent in response, looking at the floor. Adrian decided it didn't matter and clarified that Roxy only knew how to borrow the power of the constellation and how to collect magical energy, and she confirmed his words. The guy scratched his head, saying that he wasn't very good at it either. He told the girl to first relax her entire body and use her fingertips and toes to weakly spread her magic and not to talk. Roxy followed his instructions. Adrian said that magic must be spread slowly. In this state, the girl needs to try to feel the magic in the air. She needs to feel the magic. Roxy felt the magic coming from Adrian. The girl, who had been focused and with her eyes closed until then, opened her eyes wide in surprise. She exhaled. Adrian noticed it and asked if she felt anything. Roxy said she felt a form of magic that surrounded the boy. He explained to her that this was one of the ways to sense magic. The girl could even notice the weak magical energy that flowed out of the body. This was one of those things that the girl could do with precise control of magic. Adrian said that the more often you use magic, the easier it is to feel the remnants of magic on the ground or in the air. Roxy replied that she understood him. If a girl can see the magic of things, then she can also determine in what form magical traces are formed. If Roxy trains more, she will be able to see the silhouette clearly, but she should learn the rest without Adrian. She agreed with this. Having finished remembering, the girl stared at Drake with an angry look. Drake approached the girl, wondering who Adrian was, but then said that he realized something. He asked if Adrian was the shameless guy who was with Roxy before. Did he really have talent, even though he looked just stupid? The girl gritted her teeth, irritated by Drake's words. She said that Adrian was much stronger than Drake and asked why Drake came here. Why? Drake repeated after her with a grin, drawing his sword from its sheath. His sword sparkled with purple light. The guy crossed his sword with Roxy, who was ready to strike, saying that this is why he was here. His eyes widened, not expecting this. Roxy pushed him away with her sword. Drake flew back a short distance, tearing the blade of his sword away from the girl's blade. The guy was confused. He didn't understand when Roxy had become so strong. Adrian concentrated on his fingers. He stood, focused on the magic, the blue light around him. Adrian was a little surprised that he didn't find what he was looking for. He had so many hiding places, and in Valhalla there was only one. In the distance from him, something on the ground began to glow with a blue magical light. Adrian chuckled with pleasure, rejoicing to himself that he had found another hiding place. The guy shifted his gaze, noticing something. He heard something among the trees. A giant flash appeared in the distance in the forest. Roxy continued to fight Drake at this time. Drake lunged at her. The girl once again swung at the guy. Their swords clashed blades. Drake stared in dismay at the trembling blade of the sword in his hands. He asked the girl with a grin if she was learning to be a wild boar at the academy. Drake saw that she had become physically stronger. Roxy told Drake to give up the double blade. The guy asked her if she was crazy. He rushed at the girl, declaring that an illegitimate child like her did not deserve this. Roxy stood with her sword at the ready. Her sword glowed blue. The guy was rushing with a sword towards the girl, who had already swung her sword in response to his attack. Roxy turned the sword. She dealt a powerful blow to the guy with her sword. The girl waited for the moment when he dropped his sword. Roxy slashed at Drake with the hilt of her sword. The guy exhaled from the blow. He fell on his back to the ground, along with his sword. The girl exhaled, changing the position of her sword. She didn't think she could land even one hit on Drake, but in the end, the girl was able to defeat him. Roxy moved to pick up the fallen double blade from the ground. Drake asked the girl if she really believed that he could defeat him by catching her off guard. The boy rose from the ground, surrounded by magic, holding his sword in his hands. He clarified that he had already said this before. Drake thought that Roxy's strength was ridiculous. She couldn't defeat someone who signed a contract with a constellation. The guy got hit because he was caught off guard, but now he was going to kill the girl. Roxy noticed the magic surrounding Drake's sword and asked if he was a villain. The girl asked him why. The guy threw his sword over his shoulder and asked why she asked. Drake asked her why and swung his sword at the girl. Roxy drew her sword from its sheath. She swung her sword at the guy, but he dodged it in time. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. The guy pushed her away with all his strength a short distance, his sword glowing purple. The girl gasped, falling to the ground. Drake asked her mockingly if she was going to get up. He said it would be better if she didn't do it. Roxy looked at the bottom of her shirt. There was a large dark stain on her stomach, clearly left behind by the blow. She tried to get up with a groan. The guy told her that if she didn't move, she wouldn't die. Roxy asked him when he mentioned the contract if it meant the guy had made a contract with an evil constellation. Drake explained that since he was the leader of the Jinsa Guild, he had signed a contract with a high-ranking constellation to save face. But for now, the guy was on the side of the betrayed. The girl had heard of the devotees before, the third most dangerous group in the world. She asked why he had made a contract with one of the devoted constellations, but the girl did not understand. Roxy wondered if the benefits of joining them were better, if they were better than enjoying life. Drake asked her if she was really interested and told her to listen carefully. He was attracted by the incredible strength and power and the deviation in the need for feelings. The girl repeated after him, not understanding. Drake squatted in front of her, explaining that he joined the Jeans Guild at the age of 12. He has worked in their family guild since he was a child. At an age when the boy was only interested in games, the family expected him to become an exemplary eldest son. The reason why he is still in the Jeans Guild is because of his father's observation. It was never Drake's choice. Even as a teenager, the boy did not want this. It was then that he met one of the devotees. As soon as Drake met him, he told him to join the devotees. The man encouraged the boy by saying that Drake could satisfy the desires that lay in his heart. Perhaps this man already knew the guy's temperament. The girl clarified what Drake meant. Drake was referring to his disgust for humans. But he couldn't just join the betrayed. The guy had to fulfill a condition. Drake had to receive his family heirloom, the double blade. If Roxy had simply given up, there would have been no need to start the second selection test, and Drake would have simply been given the double blade. The girl asked if he meant the second blade. Drake was surprised that the girl did not remember. 10 years ago, the eldest daughter of the Chojan family, Roxy's older sister, participated in the first selection test. Roxy was shocked by this. The girl asked if her older sister had gone missing. Drake admitted that he couldn't control his urges during the selection test. Before searching for the double blade, the guy killed her on the mountain. Roxy froze after hearing such horrific information. After all, Drake failed to find the double blade back then, suffered a horrific injury, and failed the test. If not for that, he might have joined the betrayed 10 years ago. His father somehow found Roxy's sister and hospitalized her in a feeble attempt to save her. Drake left his sister there, hoping she would disappear. Roxy asked where her older sister was now. Drake asked if she wanted to look for her. He stated that it would be better for Roxy to disappear. Roxy's mother once fainted because she saw her daughter's face in Roxy's face. Roxy, hearing this, looked at Drake with a very angry look. Now Drake knew where the double blade was, so he decided to chop the girl down with a sword, mockingly asking her to say hello to her sister. The blade was already approaching Roxy's neck. Something happened, something that puzzled Drake. Drake's blade was stopped by Adrian with the sheath of his sword, thus saving the girl. Adrian asked what Drake was doing. He replied that it was a family matter and asked Adrian not to interfere. Adrian asked what kind of crazy family this was that would put a knife to their sister's neck. He pushed Drake away from himself and Roxy with force. Drake collided back against a tree from the impact. Roxy looked at what was happening with a tired look. She called out Adrian's name. When the guy turned to her, the girl asked why he came here. Adrian looked at her. He thought that he came here for his hiding places, and one of them was located just in this direction. The girl held the wound on her stomach. Adrian glanced at the spectacle. He turned away and said that he simply had business in that direction and advised the girl to step away and gather some magic to heal the wound. Roxy agreed with his proposal. Drake inquired from his position who Adrian was, who had appeared so suddenly, and asked if Adrian was the student Drake had met in Valhalla. Drake stood up and repeated that it was a family matter. He shouted that Hadrian must die and rushed towards him, deciding to stab him with his sword. Purple magic sparkled around his sword. Adrian stopped Drake's sword with his hand. Drake hesitated but struck again. Adrian dodged the sword strike, confusing Drake. The boy turned his sword with the hilt forward. He hit Drake with the hilt, saying that he shouldn't aim at a guy who's standing still. Drake should think that such a guy can dodge. Drops of blood flew from Drake's mouth. He began to fall to the ground, and Adrian pounced on him from above, attacking with his sheathed sword. Drake was surprised that his opponent was prepared for his attack. He was stabbed in the stomach with a sword again. Adrian's blow was so powerful that the ground beneath Drake's body cracked. The guy remained lying on the ground with his mouth open. Adrian raised his sword, stopping his attack on Drake. He turned to the girl, asking her how she was feeling. The guy asked if Roxy was able to walk. She was not sure about it and decided to try. A purple glow appeared on Adrian's cheek from the direction of the fallen Drake. He and the girl looked towards the seemingly defeated boy, whose body was emitting purple dark magic. Barie said that it was sword magic. Adrian knew this and assumed that Drake was also a villain. Drake stamped his foot. He stood up from the ground, holding his sword in his hand, purple magic visible around him. Drake called Hadrian just a newcomer to Valhalla. He leapt high towards Adrian, swinging his blade, asking if he thought he could defeat the guild leader. Hadrian parried his opponent's attack with his sword. Drake noticed with irritation that, despite the fact that he had hit the guy with magic, he had not even moved from the spot. Adrian asked Drake again about the guild leader. He pushed Drake away again, asking if he really believed that being a leader would help him. The guild leader groaned from the powerful blow and glared at Adrian with hatred. Drake couldn't believe that a 17-year-old boy could have such strength. He managed to block all his attacks and even counterattack. Drake realized he had no choice but to use it. It has a lot of side effects, but if the guy gets hit again, it's all over for him. He held the purple pass stone in his hands. With the help of the stone, Drake will be able to make a virtual contract with the constellation, so he bites the stone. Adrian stared at the boy in front of him in confusion. Drake chuckled, after which he laughed, spreading his arms out to the side, surrounded by purple and black magic. At the entrance to the test site, a crowd of people were puzzled by what was happening. They thought an earthquake had started. One of the girls in the crowd pointed somewhere, attracting everyone's attention. They saw dark purple magic in the distance, reaching upwards, and wondered what it was. The man was shocked by the sight. This is sword magic, dense enough for the general public to see. And there is also the double blade. Such an event happened in the middle of the selection test. He had to go and see what was going on there. Adrian looked at the guy in front of him, enveloped in the magic of the sword. He said he watched what Drake was doing, but he ended up just amping up the magic. Drake stated that Adrian was too stupid to understand this. The magic boost was just an additional effect. This is part of the power he received through a temporary contract with the constellation. Drake stated that Adrian will die here, and behind Drake, the silhouette of a dragon became visible. The dragon that kills everyone recognized the sacred relic and descended. The dragon showed its teeth, as if glad to have descended after a long time. The dragon activated its all-seeing eye ability. Adrian raised an eyebrow slightly, but he still didn't look scared or impressed. The dragon's eyes widened, taken aback by this reaction. He stared at Adrian in horror. The dragon has deactivated the all-seeing eye ability. He activated the ability again. The dragon was terrified. The creature exclaimed that it had to get out of here. Drake asked him again in confusion, calling him Sir Constellation. The dragon rejected the call and terminated the temporary contract. The constellation took its power and fled. Drake stood there, puzzled, no longer able to stand. The guy didn't know what to do now. He was stabbed in the stomach with a sheathed sword. Adrian asked if Drake still thought he could defeat and kill him. He pushed the hilt of the sword with his hand. Thus, Adrian knocked Drake's weapon away again and delivered a powerful blow. Drake's mouth opened wide in pain. He fell to the ground exhausted. The leader of the devotees, and also the Dragon King, was shocked when he saw the message that appeared, which he received from the dragon, who reported that he was in trouble because of the leader of the devotees, and asked if he wanted to disappear from the mortal world. The man asked the dragon for forgiveness. The leader of the devoted hit his forehead on the floor in an apology. The dragon advised him not to distribute any more artificial relics in the future. The man hit his forehead on the floor again, saying that he understood everything, and the dragon told the leader to behave well. The leader of the devotees stood in place, his forehead pressed to the floor. The dragon's messages disappeared. The man began to rise from the floor. He did not understand what had made the constellation so furious. The leader realized that the guy he gave the relic to had done something wrong. The man got up from the floor. The leader asked the constellation what had happened, but received no answer. He decided to find out what happened. The windows of the Valhalla dormitory glowed at night. Adrian opened the door to his room. He exhaled as he entered the room and took the backpack off his back. The guy put his hand into his backpack, looking for something. Adrian smiled, rejoicing that he had finally gotten what he wanted. He took out the Divine Arts, which looked like a book. Barie asked him about the Divine Arts. Adrian said that this was the main reason why he was looking for the caches. Divine Arts is a breathing technique that can raise a person's magical power to a very high level. Constellation asked if there was a difference from the breathing technique that Adrian used before Reincarnation. Adrian said that his early breathing technique was complete garbage. When the guy was a nobody, he just bought it at the market, mastered it, and used it until the very end. Barie said that he understands this. Adrian continued to think to himself that when he found this divine art 300 years ago, the guy couldn't change his breathing technique because it was already ingrained in his body. When he fought with Barie, he suffered greatly. Due to his poor breathing technique, he ran out of magic power. But Adrian can start all over again with this new body, so he discovered the Divine Arts. He was going to stop training his body for a while to study the Divine Arts. Barie reminded the guy about the situation earlier and said that Adrian left Roxy wounded along with Drake. Adrian explained that he heard someone approaching, so he left them there. He thought that the guy and girl were capable of dealing with it themselves. Adrian remembered standing in front of the boy who had fallen to the ground. Drake's body lay on the ground, face down. Barie asked if Adrian had killed him. The The guy thought to himself that he couldn't kill Drake. He had already been involved in another incident in Valhalla, so if he was involved in another one, he would be in trouble. There were some tiny traces of magic left on Drake, which meant he would survive. Adrian asked if Roxy could stand up. She said she could. The guy wanted to say something else, but he heard the sounds of someone approaching. Adrian thought it might be Roxy's family, and their proximity would make it more difficult to find the hiding places. He turned to Roxy. Adrian said that most likely her family was coming to the scene of the incident and told the girl to sit and wait. He needed to do something, so he was already leaving. The guy asked her to tell the family that it was Roxy who beat Drake. Adrian, putting up the hood of his sweatshirt, said that he had used too much force. That was why Drake was unconscious and said goodbye. Roxy said she understood and said goodbye too. Having finished his recollection, Adrian lay down on the bed. He thought that once he mastered the divine arts, he would return the remaining storage stones, so the last time he absorbed their magical power, he was unable to absorb it all due to his own low ability. Adrian thought he should take a rest. At this time, in the Chojan family's house, people gathered around the table for a meeting. The man at the head of the table said that thanks to the press who came to film their family's selection test, articles appeared quickly. He asked if they had all been read, and one woman confirmed that most of the articles had been read. One article suggested that the Chojan family is connected to the devotees. There was more than one such article. The man called it chaos. He couldn't believe that someone from the Chojan family could be a villain. In addition to this, the association published an official letter and he received a statement from the association. When something similar happened to the Ventric family, it had nothing to do with the Chojan family, so they simply kept silent. But in this case, that approach won't work. Drake was handed over to the police. The man inquired about Roxy's condition. He was told that she had been sent to the Chojan family hospital for treatment. The girl's wound is significant, but her organs are normal, the bleeding has stopped, and she will not need any major surgery. The man, hearing this news, sank back in his chair with relief. One of those present reported that there were also several articles about Roxy. In them, Roxy was called a genius who managed to defeat a member of the devotees while being an ordinary student. The man asked if there were any articles about the girl turning against her family. The selection test ended in chaos, but the next head of the family has been confirmed, and articles like these will help Roxy firmly establish herself as the successor. The man agreed with this. It's good that Roxy has a legitimate chance of success, but defeating Drake alone is weird. He remembered discovering the girl. She sat, clutching her wound, next to Drake's body. Then Roxy said that the guy attacked her with evil magic, so she knocked him unconscious. She was asked how she managed to do this because a lot of magical power was visible above the mountains. The girl was lifted from the ground by bodyguards. She replied that Adrian taught her. The man decided to search for information on the internet. He found an article about how Adrian openly told the guild guides to go to hell. In Valhalla, day had already broken. Adrian walked up to his desk. He shifted his gaze, noticing something. Roxy sat at her desk with her back to Adrian. Adrian sat back down in his seat. He thought Roxy should have been hospitalized, but she seemed to be okay. The girl turned towards the guy. She smiled at Adrian and waved her hand at him. The guy, one of a couple of guys passing behind him, thought the girl waved at him and was surprised. His interlocutor said that Roxy would never wave at him. Adrian remembered how he studied the divine arts. He stretched his hand forward, palm up. Then, the guy received a message from Roxy. She said that she would not be able to attend training for some time. The doctor forbade her to participate in any physical activity and sent a sad emoji in the form of a bunny. Adrian thought that given the type of bleeding the girl had, this was quite expected. He said he was going to do his own thing for the next few weeks, so the girl could do whatever she wanted. Roxy started sending a bunch of nodding bunny emojis. The guy demanded that she stop. Barie said that Adrian needed to know something. The black magic they encountered seemed familiar to the constellation. Adrian asked if Barie remembered anything about this. He said no. In connection with this, the guy asked what was going on. It wasn't that Barie didn't want to remember it. It was that something was blocking his memories. Adrian assumed it was because of the scoundrel Barie had mentioned last time. Barie wasn't sure, but if he could fulfill the second condition, perhaps it would help overcome this mental block. But that was just his theory. Adrian thought about the second condition, the Eye of the Great Forest. The guy thought it was just an area used to evaluate performance, but this is where the final practical exam takes place, and apparently people with the lowest combined scores for the midterms and finals will be eliminated. Did this mean that all Adrian could do was wait for the final exam, which seemed like a waste of time to him? Adrian, sitting in class, thought that he still needed a little time to get his bearings. and then he was going to go in search of the great eye of the forest. The teacher, who entered the classroom, ordered everyone to take their seats when he entered the classroom. Before he starts the lesson, he needs to make a short announcement. The teacher asked if everyone knew about the inter-academy competition that would take place next month and received an affirmative answer. Barie said the teacher had already mentioned this after the midterm exam. Their school was thinking about choosing its members, so the school planned to choose the best students based on the results of the midterm exam. After informing this, the teacher told Adrian to follow him. The guy was slightly surprised. The teacher and Adrian came to the office. The man noted that they often met here. The guy agreed, since the man often called him here. The teacher confirmed that this was true and said that he needed to talk about Adrian's participation in the inter-academy competition. The guy immediately refused. The man said that he hadn't even gotten to the important part. Adrian asked what kind of competition this was. The teacher was sure that he had told about it in class, but was ready to tell it again. There are 3 major hunter training institutions in the world, one of which is Valhalla Academy in Korea, the second establishment in China called White Lotus, the third establishment in the USA called Heroes. Each of the 3 academies selects several first-year students as representatives and invites them to participate in a competition that includes sparring, escaping a maze, and more. Valhalla Academy plans to send those who scored the highest on the practical exam. Adrian yawned demonstratively, and the man asked if he was interested. The teacher explained that if their academy won first place, not only would all the participants receive a scholarship, but the boy interrupted him, saying that they would be showered with money and all that. Adrian is not interested. The teacher said that he knew that he wanted to get into the eye of the great forest. Adrian asked him again, puzzled, since he did not expect such a phrase. The teacher explained that the eye of the great forest is the place where the final exam will take place. The final test in the competition will be entering the eye of the great forest. This will be basically the same as the final exam, and of course, those who complete this task will be exempt from the final exam. But if Adrian fails the test, he will have to wait until the final exam. Adrian confirmed that he understands everything. The guy agreed to take part in the competition. It was already dark, but the windows of the Ventric family estate were lit up. The head of the family, a fair-haired girl named Adelia Ventric, asked how the preparations were going. The 2 men in front of her said that everything was going well, addressing her as mistress and bowing. However, preparations would likely take another month, and Adelia told the men to continue in the same spirit. At first, the girl wanted to ask about Valhalla, but changed her mind and asked how Bob was doing. She was told that there were no violations to report. She told me to let her know if necessary. The men mentioned that they had received some disturbing news, even though it did not concern them. Construction of a building made from paper money has begun at the market. The men believed that the Black Cat was responsible for this. Adelia wondered what he was planning. Since the Black Cat had never done anything like this before, a message window lit up in front of her, the constellation commanding her to speak in more detail. The girl was surprised by the message she received. Market, Area 7. Banknotes were loaded using a crane. The Black Cat stood in front of the window, watching what was happening. He said that they are ready to do whatever the constellation tells them to do. But what is the purpose of building a building out of paper money? The brunette and red-eyed girl called it a gift for someone with a smile. The constellation was asked why it was ordering a building to be built from banknotes, to which it received a message that the two-faced ruler said it was a gift. The Black Cat wondered who this gift was for. He received a message. The two-faced ruler was wondering if the Black Cat had found the one who sold the ring. The Black Cat said that he didn't find it. All the seller told him was the main facial features and voice. But since the customer's contact information was recorded that day, they searched through all available records to find him. The constellation told the Black Cat to hurry. The teacher sat in the Valhalla staff room. He scratched his head thoughtfully, looking at the screen of his laptop. The senior instructor, Adam, approached him, put his hand on the teacher's shoulder, and asked if he had selected all the participants for the competition. The teacher confirmed that everything was ready. Adam asked to see the list of participants. Except for one participant, all of them are from the teacher's class. Adam noticed Adrian's name on the list and said it was surprising that the guy was participating. The teacher said that Adrian initially did not agree, but as soon as the man said that the competition would take place on the territory of the Eye of the Great Forest, the boy suddenly changed his mind and decided to take part. Adam thought this was strange since most people would hesitate upon hearing this, and the teacher asked if he was sure. The instructor suggested that Adrian simply didn't know what the Eye of the Great Forest was, since the boy slept during the lessons. Adam thought to himself that it looked like Adrian was attending the academy for ulterior motives. He asked if he could gather the students and conduct the training himself. The teacher agreed and said that he would change their schedule to accommodate the training. Adam left, wishing him luck, for which the man thanked him. A few days later, the students on the list gathered in the small hall of Valhalla, sitting on chairs, waiting. Among those present was John Davis. Yoshin was also in attendance. Roxy looked around. There was also a student wearing glasses. Adrian sat with his hands in his pants pockets. Adam walked into the classroom holding a folder. He asked if everyone was there and concluded from the number of students that they were. The instructor was glad to meet those present. He was sure that the students had already seen him during the midterm exams, but he still felt it necessary to introduce himself. The reason the students are gathered here is because of the inter-academy competition that will soon take place, so Adam will tell you today about the training the students will have to go through. They will need to complete 3 tasks. The first task is a duel between students. It will be similar to the entrance exam that the students have already taken. The second task is a team battle. 5 academy members in a team compete against a team from another academy. All teams will be fighting at the same time, so the team captain's ability to navigate the situation is important in this task. The third task involves the Eye of the Great Forest, and after hearing about it, Adrian began to listen more carefully. Even though the exam for the guys is still ahead, Adam is not able to give much information, but he can say that the Eye of the Great Forest is a labyrinth. The Eye of the Great Forest is a forest full of trees. Unlike a normal forest, the gates are heavily guarded and designed in such a way that anyone who tries to enter through them will be detained. The only way to enter is through the official gates. All the senior instructor can say is that each team will enter the Eye of the Great Forest, and a specific task will be given on the day of the competition. Since there was nothing more to say, Adam suggested moving on. He was going to explain the specifics and format of a team battle. The students already had experience working as a team during the dungeon raid, and Adrian was slightly surprised when he realized that there would be no more explanation regarding the Eye of the Great Forest. He asked himself if there was a barrier, couldn't the guy break through, but it seemed like it wouldn't be that easy. Adam finished talking about the team battle and decided to start explaining what their training would look like. The instructor asked if there were any questions, and Adrian raised his hand. Adrian asked if it was possible to train alone. Adam said it didn't matter. If a guy wanted to train alone, he could do it. Roxy raised her hand and declared that in that case, she would also train alone. The man asked if anyone else wanted to train alone or ask a question. The students remained silent in response. Adam suggested they leave it at that and said they would see each other at practice. Everyone started to leave, but Roxy and Adrian remained sitting in their chairs. Adrian figured that he would have just enough time to master the technique before the competition began. He would absorb all the mana and would be in excellent condition as soon as the competition began. The guy will spend the rest of the time training his own body while he is thinking about this. Someone called his name. Roxy asked the guy if she should just join the training. He asked why she was asking, since she was originally going to train alone. Adrian also recalled that the girl mentioned that she couldn't train hard. Roxy began to remember her dialogue with the teacher. He told her then that he had read an article about the girl's condition, but thought it would be worth asking her personally about her desire to participate. The man asked if she would participate. The girl asked if Adrian would be participating. The teacher said that he heard that he would. Roxy said that in that case she was going to participate. The man told her that her wound was not yet healed. The girl thought that everything would be fine with her. After finishing reminiscing, Roxy thought that she was already halfway to becoming the head of the family. But thanks to Adrian, the girl found another goal. Her goal became to become stronger and help Adrian achieve what he wants to achieve, just like he once helped Roxy. Adrian was confused by her behavior. He noticed that she was talking at first, and then suddenly stopped and laughed creepily, after which he repeated his question about hard training. The girl confirmed that she can't train hard yet. The guy then suggested not to focus on mana control for most of the training. He told her to stick to light walking during training and keep all energy to a minimum. Adrian said that when he finished his work, he would help the girl a little more, and said goodbye. It was not quiet in some dark building in the evening. A guy tied to a chair begged 2 of the Samsol Alliance to have mercy on him. He asked to be released, promising to give his tormentors everything they wanted. The bald man in front of him pulled out a knife with a smile. He threw the knife into the guy's chest, causing him to cough up some more blood. The guy bent over, losing consciousness. And at the same time, his life? A woman, Lisa, asked a bald man named Al if he could have killed the guy faster. Al said it wasn't that interesting. Lisa felt her phone vibrate and assumed it was a new order. Al asked if she had received a new target for assassination. The woman confirmed this. The new target was Adrian. The woman assumed that he was a student of Valhalla. The boy's body was hanging, tied to a chair. The man pulled a knife from the corpse's chest. Al asked why they were ordered to kill this student. Lisa didn't know, but she thought that the client paid a lot of money. The man asked about the deadline. She replied that the employers wanted Adrian to be killed in a month during the competition. Al asked if they couldn't kill the student now. Lisa said that the academy and dorm security would stop them, and asked if he wanted them to break through the protective barrier and kill Adrian. The man noticed that there would be other students present during the competition and asked if that would be more dangerous. Lisa said she was informed of this. The third day of the competition will take place in a place called the Eye of the Great Forest, a labyrinth made up of trees. The students must find their way out of the labyrinth themselves. Al asked if there would be an instructor with them. Lisa said there would only be a large drone watching from above, and other than the guards at the entrance, the rest would be monitoring from the observation room. Al said they would have to hide and wait for the right moment. He didn't find that interesting. Lisa noted that they would still have to carry out the order. The man knew this. A month later, the first day of the competition arrived. Among the students cheering in the stands, Bob Ventric sat with a gloomy look on his face with his companion Alice. He looked at what was happening gloomily. Bob remembered calling his father. He reported that he had received the money, and his father Eden was pleased with this. The man wanted to say what to do with the money, but Bob interrupted him, saying that he would decide for himself what to do. The guy said that he ordered the assassination of Adrian from the Samsol Alliance. Eden asked in shock if the guy was serious. Bob reminded him that he had already said that there was nothing that could connect the man with his actions. Samsol Alliance accepted the order, and Eden was taken aback when she heard the name. Father had heard a lot about them, especially about the leader of the Alliance. The Alliance is a team of 3 people who work together to become invincible. The man asked him not to do anything that could give Bob away, and the boy agreed with him. Bob was sitting in the stands. The Alliance managed to send him a reply that they would take care of Adrian's death during the competition. The guy thought that there was no need for him to stay here. He told Alice that they were leaving here. The man who approached the microphone greeted the students and everyone who came. He introduced himself as the chairman of Valhalla Academy. The chairman said that it was worth introducing the competition participants. The first participant is White Lotus Academy from China. Next, Academy Heroes from the USA. The man was about to introduce the final participant. The final participant, Valhalla Academy from Korea. The competition will last 3 days, with the first stage, a duel between students taking place today. The chairman ordered the representatives of the academies to return to their places and wait until they were called. Adam watched what was happening from above. It was difficult to guess his emotion from his gaze. The instructor heard his name being called. Jack Rover, the senior instructor at the Hero Academy, approached him and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Adam confirmed this by calling Jack third place, who asked not to call him that. He also said that Valhalla was not the only one who took first place. Adam agreed with this. Rover said this year will be different. He believed that the heroes would take first place this year. Adam asked why he was sure of this. Jack told him about the new contractor and asked if his interlocutor knew him, and he confirmed it. The same guy they call the Destroyer, Logan. Jack reported that Logan's son is studying at Hero Academy. In addition, the son of the Destroyer came to the competition. Logan's son, Logan Jr. Adam said that in that case, he was looking forward to seeing what the guy was capable of. Jack reported that Logan Jr. had already signed a contract with his father's constellation. Adam clarified, a contract with the Destroyer of everything. He asked if the boy used the same destruction as his father. Jack stated that he could use destruction, but he was not as good as his father. Rover heard that the new students of Valhalla were also strong, especially Adrian. The man heard that the guy caught and beat the villain. Adam confirmed this and said that Roxy was able to repeat it. Jack noted that they were then worthy opponents for Logan Jr., considering that he easily defeated adult contractors. Adam just chuckled, and Rover noticed that it was too weak a reaction. The participants of the first round have been determined. Adam said Jack would understand his lackluster reaction after watching the match. The first to face off were Adrian and Logan Jr. The boys representing different academies stood in front of each other. The rule is the same for all matches. The winner is the one who knocks the opponent unconscious first. Even if one of the fighters deals fatal damage, the stadium's system will automatically mitigate it, instead inflicting an electric charge that will knock out the target so the opponents can feel free to give it their all without any outside interference. The defense system will remain in effect until the end of the battle. Students should keep this in mind when they hear the start command and begin the battle. Adrian questioned why such a security system was used, and Barie explained that competitors had to be healthy to participate in the next trials. Logan Jr. waited tensely for the countdown to end. And then the number 1 was spoken. As soon as the start command sounded, Adrian swung his fist at Logan. But he failed to strike. Logan's hand clenched around his fist. He asked if Adrian was really so confident in his strength. Logan held the guy's fist, preventing him from striking. Adrian said he didn't think so, and he still had a long way to go. Logan noticed that the guy was more modest than he thought. Adrian said that modesty is not as important as the fact that he is still growing in skills. The guy asked how long Logan was going to block his punches. Adrian grabbed Logan's fist, lifting him off the ground. He swung his other hand, clenched into a fist. Adrian delivered a powerful blow to his opponent's chest. Logan fell to his knees, noticing how hard the blow was. Adrian said that his opponent was stronger than he expected. He thought that Logan would lose consciousness after the first blow. Both instructors watched what was happening. Adam noticed that Logan was really strong. Since he withstood Adrian's blow, Jack watched the fight in shock. Rover had already seen Adrian perform at the inauguration ceremony. But the guy wasn't that strong back then. Jack thought that this was not the end. Logan hasn't used destruction yet. Golden magic appeared in the boy's hand. He tried to hit Adrian in the head, but he dodged. Logan's hand only tore the ends of the hair, but golden light still emanated from it. Adrian's eyes widened. He kicked his opponent away, asking what he was doing. Adrian touched his hair where Logan had chopped it off, and he noticed that if his opponent had aimed better, he would have hit him. Logan exhaled, shocked that Adrian had only hit him twice, and yet Logan already felt like he was about to faint. He thought that if he couldn't hit with destruction, there was no point in using it. The guy thought about the solution. He had another way. Logan touched the floor with his palms, glowing yellow as it began to crack. The cracks increased in size and length. Adrian asked calmly why his opponent was destroying the floor. Logan stared at him. Pieces of the floor rose up, causing Adrian to be surprised. The debris began to obscure Logan's view, and he reasoned that Adrian wouldn't be able to dodge attacks if he couldn't see them. Logan was going to attack from a blind spot. Adrian noticed an enemy sneaking up on him. Logan stared at him in shock, realizing he had been noticed. He touched the floor with his hand again, thinking it was too late. One of the fragments hit Logan in the face. Adrian asked if Logan was serious about hiding behind the rubble. Wouldn't it be easier to attack directly since he uses magic? Adrian hit the guy hard on the nose. Logan fell to the floor, unconscious. The first round is over. Adrian from Valhalla Academy has won. Jack's mouth dropped open in shock as he watched this, and Adam explained that was why he had acted so calmly. He called Adrian a monster. In the next round against the White Lotus disciple, the guy also emerged victorious. He also defeated a student from the Heroes. In the final round, Adrian had to fight Roxy. The girl noted out loud that they had reached the final round, but since they were both Valhalla students, it seemed like their academy's victory was guaranteed. There is no reason for this round to be held other than to determine the ranking. The winner would receive a scholarship, but the girl didn't care, so she asked if she should concede the victory. Adrian said that he didn't care who won either, but he told her not to give in. Since they were here, it would be remiss not to show off her skills. The guy wanted to know how much better Roxy had become. Adrian asked the girl to attack with all her strength and said that he would take her injury into account. Roxy understood him. She drew her blade and assumed a fighting stance. Adrian swung his fist with a smile. The chairman watched in shock as what was happening in the arena. Jack grabbed his head. Even instructor Adam looked surprised. The students representing Valhalla were also shocked. Roxy was lying on the floor. There were a bunch of cracks around her, and her blade was lying next to her. Adrian was standing with his fist outstretched and was clearly to blame for the girl's current state. The final round was declared over, and Adrian, a student of Valhalla Academy, was declared the winner. Barie noted that this was quite ruthless on Adrian's part, since he said that he would take the girl's injury into account. Adrian said that he really restrained himself since he did not hit her in the stomach. It was his improvisation. Roxy's blade was trajectorying towards the guy's stomach, so he punched the weapon. Adrian had definitely become stronger. His mana reserve was increasing. He could now hold a little mana. The guy looked at the girl lying face down on the floor. He noticed that Roxy had also become stronger. It was already dark, but the windows of Valhalla Academy were still lit. Adam called the disciples good fellows. He asked if everything was okay with them after the test, and the students unanimously confirmed that they were feeling well. The instructor said that thanks to the protection system they were not harmed, but just in case it was better to go to the infirmary and get examined. He decided to tell them about tomorrow. Adrian considered it a waste of time. He didn't understand why he needed to wait another day to get to the eye of the great forest. Adam finished telling his story and told his disciples to go and rest. The instructor walked down the dark corridor. Someone called out to him, attracting his attention. It was Adrian who caught up with the man. Adam asked what he wanted. The guy wanted to say something about tomorrow's battle. Adrian asked if he could complete the test early and move on to the next task. And Adam asked if he meant the Eye of the Great Forest. The instructor said that this had never happened before, and he needed to look it up in the rules. There are 2 rules. Only 1 challenge is allowed each day, but there are exceptions. If the test ends quickly, the student may move on to the next test at the teacher's discretion. If the test location is not ready or the student is in an unsuitable condition, he is given time to prepare for the test. Adrian noticed the point about teacher discretion and asked what the instructor thought about it. The guy asked if he could move on to the next challenge. Adam said that if Adrian finished the test early and went into the teacher's room, he would allow the student to start the next test. Adrian said that he understood the instructor and said goodbye. Adam wished him good night in return. Barie asked the boy if he was going to complete the test with the Eye of the Great Forest tomorrow. Adrian confirmed this and was glad that he knew about this test in advance. Barie understood this. Constellation suggested that Adrian wanted to attract the attention of students from other academies. Adrian called him a fool. Barie said it was a misunderstanding. Adrian decided that he had to complete the test anyway. The next day came and everyone was back in the fighting arena. The chairman again greeted everyone present and began to explain the rules of the second test. Today, they have a team competition. 5 representatives from each academy will compete together. The test will take place in the mountains, so the spectators will watch the events through holographic screens. The image will be transmitted to the screens using special drones. The Valhalla team was warming up. Olivia asked where Adrian was. The competition was about to start. The guy just approached them, apologizing for being late. Olivia indignantly asked why he came so late. Adrian admitted that he overslept. The girl noticed that he should have arrived 30 minutes earlier and asked if he had been listening to the teacher. The guy said that he had been thinking about other things at the time. Adrian asked the girl not to start making noise. He said he would take care of everything, Olivia asked him again. She asked him if he understood what he was saying since this test was about teamwork, and the guy said that he understood that. Olivia said that because Adrian had defeated the other academies, they would all be targeting the Valhalla students and asked if he was sure he wanted to go alone. The girl turned to the others, asking if they agreed with her. Roxy approached them. Olivia asked if the girl agreed with her. Roxy asked if she could go with Adrian. He refused her, she just agreed with him, and Olivia was shocked by her calmness. Adrian asked Olivia to stop tweeting and save her energy, and she was confused by his choice of definition. The battle was supposed to begin in a few seconds. The guy said that he would face another test in the afternoon. Olivia asked what he was talking about. Adrian started to walk away from the team. The girl called out to him. He called her noisy. The guy said he needed to prepare for the Eye of the Great Forest. The test had officially begun, and the White Lotus team was already ready. But they didn't expect Adrian to sneak up and jump out from behind. One of the girls on the team recognized Adrian and told the team to get ready. The guy noticed that the girl reacted faster than he expected and swung his sword. Logan, a guy from the Hero Academy team, saw a notification that the White Lotus team was destroyed. This information shocked Logan. Only 10 minutes had passed since the start of the test. Logan realized that Adrian was heading straight for the White Lotus team. The guy thought that the Heroes team would catch up with them first. One of the team of heroes told Logan that he felt magic in that direction. He was asked if it was the Valhalla team. It turned out that it was one person. Logan ordered Luke and Dan to hold the shield. Melissa was instructed to prepare a magic circle. Bella had to prepare the shield. The hero team was ready. Melissa clarified that this is one person. Why do they need such protection? Logan said that if it was Adrian, then they really needed that kind of protection. Bella noted that Melissa did not know the enemy's strength, since she had not fought Adrian. Melissa said that Logan is also strong. He asked not to compare them. One of the guys noticed that the magic was gone. Logan asked if Adrian had left. Bella assumed that the guy left after the victory over White Lotus Academy. The Hero Academy team still held the defense. At this time, Adrian was watching them from above. An idea occurred to Logan. He guessed that the enemy was from above, but as soon as the guy guessed, his face was already met with the sword in its sheath. Adrian smiled as he punched Logan. Logan fell to the ground, his team members only just realizing what was happening. Bella was caught off guard and quickly looked away in surprise. She also received a blow from Adrian. He noticed that she was slow. Melissa held a ball of golden magic in her hands. She threw the ball at the guy, but he managed to dodge. Adrian hit the girl, asking if she really wanted to attack him with a cloud of magic. While he was distracted by Melissa, Luke and Dan came up behind him. One of them was struck in the side by a sword in its sheath. Adrian, of course, was ready, so he managed to attack. He hurt both boys with his blow. They fell to the ground, Adrian standing surrounded by a team of fallen heroes. He was glad that he could now go to the eye of the great forest. The chairman, who was in the observation room and watching the events of the test on cameras, did not understand how this could have happened. Adrian completed the team fight in 23 minutes, but to be precise, he spent even less time on the fights, 3 minutes, and 20 minutes were spent on the road. The chairman noted that this was a problem because the situation was disrupting the schedule. Adam said that he read the rules, and they said that if the challenge ended before noon, then they could start the next challenge. The instructor would like to discuss this with other academies. The chairman asked to be informed of the results of the discussion. Adam agreed. Adam wondered if Adrian asked about this because he knew about his quick victory. The man found it frightening. Adam and Jack walked down the corridor. Jack said they still needed to talk to the White Lotus, but the heroes didn't mind starting the test. The hero's instructor was finally convinced of this when he watched the team test. He didn't think the outcome would change if they postponed the test. Now Jack understood why Adam called Adrian a monster. Adam understood him. He invited Jack to go with him and talk to the White Lotus. Meanwhile, the Valhalla team was in the break room. Olivia wiped her sword, glancing sideways at Adrian. She thought he was crazy because she didn't expect him to finish the battle alone. Olivia was going to take the initiative since the teacher told her to be the team leader, but she couldn't do anything. In addition, the girl lost in a personal fight with Roxy. Olivia heard that Adrian trained her and suspected that this was the matter. At this rate, Olivia will continue to fall behind, which is something she cannot allow. The girl looked at Adrian, wondering if he would teach her if she gave up her pride. Her thoughts were interrupted by an announcement addressed to the students. Tomorrow's test with the Eye of the Great Forest has been postponed to today, and it will take place at 1 p.m. The students were asked to prepare for the test. Olivia noticed that everything happened as Adrian said. The guy said that before the test began, he needed to tell something in advance. In the Eye of the Great Forest, Adrian intended to act alone, and that everyone would survive on their own. He said that if anyone had any problems, they could call Adrian for help. Olivia thought. They had already won 2 challenges. If they didn't get the lowest score, they wouldn't lose. Even if it's a maze survival game, there shouldn't be many monsters there. Adrian looked at Olivia questioningly. He asked Olivia if she had anything to say and called her a bird, causing confusion in the girl. The girl indignantly asked why he continued to come up with nicknames for her. The guy said that now she was confirming her nicknames. And Roxy, who was watching this, thought that the nickname Bird was very cute. The students of the 3 academies stood before the gates of the labyrinth. The chairman announced a new test, Survival in a Labyrinth. As in the previous test, spectators will watch the events through holographic screens. Before the test begins, the chairman wants to tell you about the maze. The Eye of the Great Forest, where the trial takes place, is a forest-shaped labyrinth, as the name suggests. Inside is a labyrinth unlike any other. It has a unique environment where the rain never ends, and the monsters are quite low level, so there are few factors that pose a threat. Rain and dense bushes are the real threat to survival. The test is how well a person can survive. When students enter the labyrinth, their condition will be measured and checked after 5 hours. The closer a person is to their initial condition, the higher their score. Battles between teams are prohibited. The chairman announced the start of the trial. The students entered the gates of the labyrinth. At this time, Al and Lisa were in an abandoned warehouse in Valhalla. They were informed that the students had entered the Eye of the Great Forest. Samsol, under the pseudonym Alia, informed them about this. She said that it was time to go to the labyrinth. Some kind of magic is blocking the entrance to the labyrinth, and it is supported by 2 people, so we'll have to deal with them first. The Trinity teleported, illuminating everything around with purple light. Adam's eyes widened, astonished by something. The surveillance cameras were malfunctioning, and their screens showed nothing but static. The chairman considered the simultaneous failure of all cameras to be suspicious. He asked his subordinate if he had contacted the gate guard, but he replied that no one was answering him. Adam noticed that the students might encounter unexpected problems, so he suggested entering the maze with Jack. The chairman agreed with his suggestion. They were in a hurry. A crowd of people with Adam at the head came to the labyrinth. At the place of arrival, they found a pile of giant stone debris blocking the way. It was raining in the labyrinth, as promised. The hero team stood there, getting wet, looking dejected. One team member approached Logan. Melissa said that Bella wasn't feeling well. Bella was shaking but said she was fine. The rain was just unexpected and cold. Logan noted that if the girl got hypothermia, she would be expelled. The team leader wanted them to at least score high even if they didn't win. He suggested building a hut to get out of the rain. So he ordered Melissa to collect large leaves and Dan and Luke to collect branches. Logan decided to level the ground and dig a hole. He noticed a purple-black portal ahead. Alice, who came out of it, asked why it was raining here. Al told her to forget about it, since they needed to finish the mission. Al said he would kill Adrian. The man, already holding it in his hand, noticed a surprised Logan. Al shouted that it wasn't Adrian. Alia, covering her head with her hands, explained that she teleported them to a source of moderately strong magic because it was the only way to find Adrian. Logan, who was listening to their conversation, wondered who these people were and if they wanted to kill Adrian. The guy felt black magic. He assumed that the Trinity in front of him were villains. Lisa said they couldn't leave any witnesses and told Al to deal with them. The man replied that he knew it. Logan cursed, a clot of golden magic already glowing in his hand. He formed a ball of magic and swung it, asking the trio what they were doing here. The knife in Al's hands gleamed. A blade pierced Logan's stomach. Al, who was behind the guy, asked if Logan had really insulted him. The boy stared at the man from behind with incomprehension. He asked how he managed to end up behind. The man advised the guy to look from the front. Turning around, Logan saw the second Al ahead, or rather the first. He was shocked by this. Front Al swung his knife. He plunged another blade into Logan's stomach, saying that it was his double. Logan fell with a splash onto the wet ground. Lisa asked if he killed him. Al said he would let Logan bleed out slowly. There was a cry of shock. Bella, with the shield on her back, found Logan fallen. Lisa again ordered the man to get rid of the witnesses. He agreed with her. Al asked if he could do whatever he wanted. The woman allowed it. The only thing that mattered to her was that he finished faster. The man rushed towards Bella with a smile. Adrian ran through the forest in search. Madagai Rona's house. The guy wondered if there were any houses in the labyrinth at all. He only saw bushes and trees. Adrian ran past Melissa, who was holding leaves in her hands. The girl muttered something, after which she dropped the leaves from her hands and screamed. In front of her was Al, surrounded by the bodies of the other team members. Lisa was irritated by the appearance of another witness. The man wondered where they come from. Al suddenly noticed something. Adrian approached the frightened, tearful Melissa. Lisa smiled slyly, realizing that their target had come to them on its own. Al assumed that the guy was attracted by the screams, which is why he doesn't kill people right away. Adriana was tensed by the word goal. He lowered his gaze. The Hero Academy team lay on the ground as the rain pounded their bodies. Adrian ordered Melissa to deal with the wounded while he dealt with the enemy. The boy noticed that the defeated students were still alive. Adrian also noted that they looked like they didn't want to be killed right away. But why leave the students to bleed? He told the trio that they had ruined his mood. Since they had gotten in here, he would have to get rid of them. Al decided that the guy didn't understand the situation he was in, because he was stuck in this labyrinth. The man explained that they had broken into the labyrinth through the only entrance and had disabled the surveillance drones. Adrian noted that the teachers had already noticed this by then. Al said that they wouldn't be able to get here fast enough. The entrance was completely destroyed. It will take the teachers at least an hour. Adrian said it was just 1 hour. He raised his head, asking no one in particular if he had only an hour left to search. Al raised the knife, saying that he didn't understand what Adrian was talking about. The man and his double ran at the guy from both sides. Al swung his knife forward. His blade only pierced the ground, missing the guy. Al was surprised by this. He and his double looked around, not understanding where Adrian had gone. Adrian cursed. He swung his sheathed sword at Ayla, shouting that he would kill them. The guy hit the man on the bridge of the nose. Al flew back a fair distance, blood pouring from his mouth.